Good evening and welcome to the Carlisle Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, April 24th, 2018. I will quickly read through the agenda. We do expect Luke to join us later on tonight. So at 7 o'clock, everything's pushed off 15 minutes, but I'm going to read the times that are on here. At 7 o'clock, we will have community input. At 7:05, we will discuss with the treasurer the sale of bond anticipation notes. At 7:30, Traffic Safety Advisory Committee has a request for a stop sign on East Street, eastbound on Rutland Street, at Rutland Street. At 8 o'clock, Colonial Power Group, Municipal Aggregation will be discussed. At 8:30, the Board of Selectmen will vote their position on the annual town meeting articles and also set assignments. At 9 o'clock, we will do appointments and resignations. At 9:10, the town administrator's report. At 9:20, Board of Selectmen liaison reports. At 9:30 minutes, and at 9:35, we will enter into executive session regarding litigation and non-union contracts. At 10 o'clock, we will adjourn. Will we be coming back into this session?
Only for the purpose of adjourning.
Only for the purpose, okay. I may take some of these out of order as time permits, though we're already 15 minutes behind, so that may not happen. So first, is there anybody here for community input? Not seeing any. Let's discuss the treasurer's sale of bond anticipation notes. Carrie.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
So I have some good news for you. Yesterday was the bond anticipation note sale for the communications system, and we received a very good rate given that interest rates have been rising. I expected a higher rate, closer to 2%, but we came in at 1.85%. So
Great.
I was very pleased with the rate, and I think it just goes to show it's really important to have a high bond rating, and it does help when you're looking at interest rates, especially in times when they're increasing, because this will save us some money, because we budgeted for a little bit more. So what we'll do with those funds, the only thing that we can do is pay down principal, because it's exempt debt. So we'll use the excess money, it's about $12,000, and pay down a little bit more principal next year when we roll this over to an official bond. So we had 3 people bid. The high bidder was Eastern Bank, and the low bidder, right? The winning bidder was Eastern Bank, and the total amount that we're borrowing is $2,961,100, and that's for the communications system.
How long?
And this note will be, the issue date, pending your approval, will be May 2nd, and it will come due March 1st, and that's the same time that our other ban comes due. So I'm very hopeful that we'll complete this project, and then we can long-term bond the land, the fire truck, and the communication system, and we'll have a big enough bond offering to go to market with.
Okay, so it's May of 2018 to March of 2019?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So it's less than a year. I think it's 299 days.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Carrie, you have any questions? I'm sorry, I'm just going left to right.
All right, it's okay, I can make the
Well,
motion.
this is not a great connection either, so.
Okay.
Okay, but you have no questions? I'll take that as a no.
All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the sale of a bond anticipation note for the purpose of a public safety communication system as authorized by Article 19 of Annual Town Meeting held May 2nd, 2017. The note will be dated May 2nd, 2018, will come due March 1st, 2019, and will be issued in the amount of $2,961,100 at an interest rate of 1.85%, payable to Eastern Bank.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Brown, aye.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Von Rose, good night.
Okay. Message,
That was a
the
lot easier.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Now I have 5 documents that require your signature. I'm not sure if you want to do it now or
Go ahead and hand them to, well,
Yeah, we'll do it
Yeah.
now.
Okay,
we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't have enough people.
We don't have enough people?
as long as we have a majority. We have
Oh, the 3. I
signatures,
was
that's
thinking we
fine.
needed 4.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
I'll do the second one. Okay. Here's the first two.
Put it in.
Okay, and then here's 3. 3 of them. One.
That's it. Something-
Yeah, it's just one page on each of these.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
He's got a longer signature.
That's a long name.
That's why,
Like me.
that's why I shortened mine to K. Reed. Much faster.
$1.85%.
Isn't that great?
It's fantastic.
Very, very good. Let's hope the interest rates stay low like this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I just heard a news report saying that, everything's going up.
Thank you very much. Thank
House is
you
just
all.
went up
Thank you,
6%.
Carrie.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
All right, so we're going to move on to these, no, we're not going to.
Traffic.
How about if you do a couple things from the town administrator's
Sure,
report?
yeah. no,
Jim?
that's it.
Oh, we got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Item number 1, just to bring to the board's attention that as of town meeting next Monday, there'll be 3 vacancies on the finance committee.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the 3 terms are expiring next Monday at town meeting. One has been vacant for some time. Michael Bishop is finishing up his 3rd consecutive term, so he cannot be reappointed to the finance committee. Lynn Lipinski is finishing her 1st term, and she's interested in being reappointed. But the net result is that we're going to have 2 vacancies to fill on the finance committee, and they will need to fill those as soon as possible. But they have a pretty important meeting in July for year-end fiscal matters, so if we can fill those vacancies between town meeting and, say, the end of June, early July, we'll be back to full speed. But it's kind of unusual that when you've got 3 members whose terms are expiring the same year. But and it's not a June 30th appointment. It's the bylaw is very specific that it expires at the end of town meeting.
Oh, it does?
The finance committee terms, for some reason, yeah.
Oh.
only
Okay.
run through town
And we have to
meeting,
wait till after that town meeting to appoint
so we do-
somebody?
Yeah, we should, yeah.
Okay.
We can reappoint Lynn, and then we'd have 2 vacancies, so.
But after town meeting, we can
After town
reappoint
meeting.
Lynn?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's just informational for now.
That's informational,
Mostly,
but-
if anybody's interested in being on FinCom, please reach out to Tim or one of the FinCom members, I guess,
Or any one of us.
or
Yeah.
any one of us.
Yeah.
Okay. The second item has to do with a matter of town meeting. Town council has asked that the board vote to declare the 2 Hartwell Road parcels as surplus to the town's general government needs, so that they may be transferred to the Conservation Commission at town meeting. And we've got a very specific motion that council drafted that needs to have been voted prior to town meeting in order for the land transfer to take place, so. so
We have to
I
take care of
suggest
it
that we-
tonight then, I guess.
I would suggest that you vote it this
So you
evening.
want to make a motion?
I'll make it. I move that the board hereby declares that that parcel of land that parcel of land located on Hartwell Road containing 1.97 acres of land and shown on Carlisle Assessor's maps as map 4, block 23A, lot 1, and further described at the Middlesex North Registry of Deeds in book 20279, page 84, and B, that parcel of land located near Hartwell Road and adjacent to the lot described above, containing 4.98 acres of land, and shown on Carlisle Assessor's maps as map 4, block 23A, lot 3, and further described at the Middlesex North Registry of Deeds in book 20279, page 84, is no longer needed for general municipal purposes, and recommend that the town meeting vote to transfer the care, custody, management, and control of the land to the Conservation Commission to be held for conservation purposes.
Okay, is there a second? Hey, Carrie, when you're not talking, can you mute? There's a lot of background noise.
Okay.
But is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, we have a list of technology equipment that the school department wishes to dispose of. In the past, they've circulated that to us. Well, first they see if other town departments are interested in any of it, but you'll see from the list that a lot of it is broken or obsolete, really no further use. They have a vendor that they can salvage it with, so, but they need to have the board vote to declare it surplus so that they can do that. So we've got a motion for the board's action in that regard.
Make a motion?
Yes, please.
I move to declare surplus the list of technology equipment dated April 6, 2018, provided by the school department for the purpose of allowing the school's IT department to dispose of it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Brown eye?
Good discussion?
Oh,
Question?
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
A lot of these laptops and desktops, or laptops especially, have poor battery life, which, if that's the only thing that's wrong with them, you know, there are probably a lot of people in town and that the COA could identify that could use these devices, both the iPads and the laptops. So I know that our vote here authorizes this, but I'm just questioning whether or not they will give other town agencies first right of refusal on any of this stuff.
Yeah, actually, they have done that, Kerry. The entire list has been circulated to all departments, including the Council on Aging. And as far as I know, no one has expressed any interest to this point, but I'll check on that before we...
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are 9-year-old computers.
I could recommend somebody in town who's doing a lot of work with these and who does a lot of refurbishing of things for elderly and poor for donation, so I can give you his name.
Sure, okay,
He
I
might
can
be
pass that along
willing
to
to
the
look at and see if there's salvageable
whole
things.
department. Sure. Okay.
Only ones that aren't as old are the iMacs.
Yeah, well, he really totally rebuilds these and refurbishes them.
I guess that's a good point. Ask about the iMacs. They're only 3 years old.
Yeah, I'll take one.
So I'm actually not gonna,
Well, hold off on
Mine's
that.
older than that.
I'm not gonna take this to a vote.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
we'll get to that one more.
Good question, Terry.
Very good. Next item, the Boston Brain Tumor Society is asking for permission once again to conduct a fundraising bike ride on Sunday, May 17th. They have obtained a certificate of insurance, and they've given us information regarding the bicycle route. You've approved this several years running, so we've got a similar motion for the board's action tonight.
Is there a motion?
do you want me to move? I move that the board approve the Boston Brain Tumor Society's request to conduct a portion of its Sunday, May 20th, 2015 bicycle ride, 2015, how about 2018?
May 17, 2018 is what it
Yeah,
says.
So we've
it's-
clearly been approving this since
That's right,
2015.
May 17th, 2018. I will change that. Okay, bicycle ride in the town of Carlisle with the understanding that they shall consult with the police department regarding the traffic and roadway safety issues.
Hey, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
The police chief is in the audience. Have they already consulted with you?
They've already reached out, we've already spoken a couple times, they're very good partners. I would say they're very responsible partners, and the race is always, ride's always well organized.
Okay.
Okay, Brown eye.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay. Let's move right through it all.
Okay, you've got a request for a cemetery deed. I believe in the motion, the last name is.
I've got it.
You've got the, okay, the correction on the motion to transfer that deed, if you'd be so kind.
Okay, is
All
there a
right, I
motion?
move that the Board of Selectmen vote to transfer land in the public burial ground to Sharon Kling, 466 Cross Street at Green Cemetery, Lot D 215, graves 1, 2, and 3.
Is there a second? Okay, is any further discussion? Okay, Brown eye.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, passes.
Yeah, okay, then just very quickly regarding the upcoming meeting schedule, we're going to be posted for 6:30 PM prior to town meeting in the cafeteria prior to the town meeting in the Corey Auditorium. And then I'll just point out, our next regular meeting is scheduled for election day, so we can talk about it later, but you might want to either not meet that night or just adjust the May schedule.
We can't, we can't even meet on election day, right?
No, because their
Right,
voting booths
right,
would
they
be in
wouldn't-
here.
Yeah.
And I'm a marshal, so I'd be busy.
Yeah.
So we could change it to the 15th, or we could just not meet that, maybe we can wait till everybody's here. Well, Luke's here
My,
now.
my only concern is I have another board meeting that meets on Tuesdays, and so I'm trying to keep my Tuesdays separate. The second and fourth is Board of Selectmen, and then,
Okay, or maybe just drop that one out and meet on the
or
fourth
I
one.
might just not go to, or either that, or I may not be, I'm just saying, I might not be able to attend
Yeah.
that first May meeting if it goes to a different one.
Yeah, well, we don't have to discuss it now, but.
Okay, we'll come back to the schedule at the end.
Mhm. Okay, and that's my report.
Okay, so it is 7:30. Thank you very much, Tim. Let's move on to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee recommendation. Chief Fisher, you can just go ahead and sit right
I
here.
sit?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Good evening, all. Thank you for hearing a couple thoughts tonight. The Traffic Safety Committee has been looking at one intersection in particular, east at Rutland, for a couple of reasons. It's come up a few times over the years that that's a dangerous intersection. And then I guess it really rose to a head when the residents who had, as you saw in my email, probably had a gentleman's agreement about how they would do their driveways just east of that intersection, are now using their driveways the way they were supposed to be used. And it's causing even more of a problem, especially for them. But you probably also saw that we did a traffic study. We left our speed and traffic monitor out there actually for a week. But the typical day, the protypical day was the day atypical day was the day I sent you. So we're getting a couple thousand cars by there a day. Posted speed limit, because that intersection has always been known to have issues going in that direction, is 25 miles an hour. Our average speed going by the monitor was 33. The speed limit just prior to that is 35, so a few hundred yards down the road. But the bottom line is people are going through there at probably too much of a clip. We've had 2 crashes this year. It's not our worst spot, but it's certainly a spot that we could have an effect on, I think, if we did a stop sign. And I think that Mr. Goddard probably brought it up a couple weeks ago at your meeting that we were going to be proposing this, because I wanted to make sure, well, we wanted to make sure, traffic safety wanted to make sure that if people had concerns, if we're wrong about this, that, you know, they'd have a chance to say something. But the recommendation from traffic safety, speaking for them, is to put the stop sign outbound on East Street at the Rutland Street intersection, to make that intersection safer. Mr. Davis has a stop sign that will work there. We've talked about a location. Obviously spoken with the folks that it would affect right there. Asking them, is this gonna be a big deal if people stop right in front of your house? And they're all in favor of it. So, so right now, that's the request in traffic safety and my recommendation
You
is we
gonna
do that
paint a
stop sign.
line also where they should be stopping, because it's not clear where they, that's a.
It's not clear whether
I
it's.
Where you
I
would
think
stop.
a line, the sign, and then some, an ease-in period where we'll, you know, be out there doing increased traffic patrol, but not, you know, more letting people know, just being aware of it, if somebody does go through that stop sign. You know, many people who've lived in Carlisle a long time, they're used to rounding that corner to the right. But, you know, so we'll be doing a lot of public education at that for a while.
And that
So
corner
line
to the
is-
right's my other worry, because that will impact the visibility of the sign, because you won't see it until depending upon where you put it, I'm not quite sure. It's possible that people won't see it.
There's a decent run.
Is there?
Did you see the Google picture I sent?
I see
So
it
there's
every
a
day as I
decent
drive.
run. So if you see where that car is, that's a few hundred yards away. So imagine the sign would be on the right side of the road.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's coming inbound, that car, because that's the wall
Right.
on the right side coming outbound.
But imagine if you can see that
Can't-
car.
You can't really see.
No, this is outbound, right? This is outbound.
That's the direction that you're gonna be going before you get to the stop sign.
That's the wall across the street. You see, this is that other wall, you can just barely see it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I thought that was, okay. Anyway,
Well,
it was hard to tell from this
Yeah.
picture. but-
You know,
Well, I thought
obviously
this
nothing-
wall, I thought this wall on the right was the one that comes from East Riding, starts at more or less.
Yep.
That's.
Correct.
Yeah, so you're going outbound this way, and you go around this corner here, and Rutland
sign will
is
be
over
there.
here.
Right,
You see.
you just said it was inbound. That's, I was just,
I'm sorry, I meant.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So and it's this curve here, because that sign is gonna probably be, the placement of the sign is gonna be, or maybe you have
All
to
the
put.
important will do
Stop ahead or something, yeah.
line.
Yeah, because, yeah.
Do we have any other three-way stop sign intersections, and any experience with that's creating more confusion or less confusing?
Freeway stops.
Can't think of
From
any.
Acton.
I don't know
No, I
about
don't,
No,
I don't
no.
think
I can't think of a single one.
That's a pretty unique intersection.
Well, even the one that's at Maple and, at,
so. Maple and 225? No.
no, the
Brook.
other, Maple and Brook.
That triangle.
Yeah, that triangle.
There's only one
There's only one
stop sign.
stop, but, anyway.
Yes.
So we had an email from a resident who lives just down the road from there, and he strongly opposed it. I don't know if you saw that email.
He didn't send it to me.
Okay. He makes
I
some
didn't see it.
good arguments. Let's see,
Came today.
I guess, well, he's saying that it's kind of an awkward place to stop because it's on a hill, and he's talking about people driving shifts. He's also pointing out that
I'm sorry.
that the measurement, he saw your measurement device, and
Yep.
he was saying that it's not really, he would like to see it at the actual intersection, because the measurement was made, I believe, he claimed before the speed limit sign,
No, it
before the
was-
speed zone took effect.
No, it was right after it. It was right after East Riding Street.
Right after East
Kind of
Reading.
halfway
And the-
between
And the
East.
sign is before East Riding Street,
Oh,
because I
okay,
always tell
okay.
people, turn right at the 25-mile-an-hour sign. That's how you can find
Okay.
East Riding.
So I have a couple, so I just wanted to bring this up because he is, he goes through that intersection, I think, more often certainly than I do, and probably as often as most people do, because he lives right there. So the other thoughts I had was, we're having the traffic engineering firm come in and look at our town center. Now, this intersection, to me, should be a T intersection, and there should be a stop sign on Rutland, and East Street being sort of the larger thoroughfare, to me, in my mind, should be thought of as a through street with a T intersection. And I wonder if some re-engineering of the roadway couldn't accomplish that to make it clearer, what's going on there. Is there enough room to have a left turn lane, for instance, so that, people can sit there and then turn? Those kind of questions. In other words, before we go and put a stop sign in there, would it be better to look at it perhaps with TEC, if they're here? We say, hey, we'd like you to spend a little bit of time looking at this intersection and telling us what, we might engineer here.
So, the only thing I would say that's, number one, a lot of his concern is pedestrians and the crosswalk, and that's not what we're talking about at all. What we're talking about is the folks who live just east of that intersection. When you're traveling East Street outbound,
Just east, that would be away from town?
away from town,
Okay.
so you round that corner, and the first few people that live there are kind of in peril with the speeds that people are going by their house. They're not coming close to the speed limit. And there was always, and I don't want to put it just on them. They were the ones that raised it. We'd actually looked at this before they brought it up. But they're actually going to start using their driveways instead of the gentleman's agreement they had, which they had before, which was they drive across each other's property and go out further away from the intersection. So they're going to be entering East Street. If somebody's even coming out at 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, so if they're coming out at 35 miles an hour, which is what, 50 feet a second, when they round that corner, they will not have the perception or reaction time enough, either car, to avoid a collision.
So, yeah, there is a funny kind of, so are there two properties there, and then so they have a way to travel parallel to East
They
Street?
did.
Oh, but the ownership has changed or something?
No, they've just
You want to use your own
decided
driveway.
They wanted to use their own driveway, and they're changing.
They don't want to let the other neighbors?
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I think it's public information. They're building another house there, and there's gonna be, they're configuring
Yeah, you
their own
mentioned the gentleman's
properties
agreement. I
differently.
didn't understand. I was thinking on the
Yeah.
west side, and I didn't understand. Okay,
Yeah.
I see what's going on.
Do you
But-
remember when the stop sign went in on the inbound side?
Yeah, that was not that long ago, actually. I remember when it wasn't there.
So it was sort of just a T intersection?
It was T with
Yes, and
Rutland.
actually, it was the Rutland, it was Maple Street that had the stop sign and not Rutland. They added it to Rutland, as I recall, but I could be.
No, I
have it
think it's the other way
backwards.
So
around.
you're not talking Maple, you're talking East.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
East Street.
I think it was the other way around. I think that Rutland's always had it. And
Was it?
I don't know, Bill, you probably remember. But it
don't
wasn't
remember.
that long ago.
It wasn't.
What was the
Which
rationale?
probably means it was like 20
What was
years
the
ago.
rationale for putting the stop sign? So you're saying it was on Rutland, and then they installed one on East?
Yes.
What was the rationale for that?
To slow people down.
And why wasn't it put on the other side?
I don't know, I wasn't on the board then. That's, and you weren't here then, right?
I
Tim,
was
were you
not.
here?
I was on planning board. I think Vivian Chaput had a lot to do with it. She also had a lot to do with the speed limit being 35
There's a
there.
difference. It's an asymmetric intersection in that sense, because the hill is kind of steep and you don't have a lot of time. Like, if you put a stop sign kind of at the top of the hill, some people may not be aware of it, even if you put a, stop sign, a head sign. Whereas on the other side, I think it's a much more gradual and sort of straighter approach, where they might see the stop sign more easily.
I think, yeah.
Do we worry at all about a stop sign at the top of a hill in the wintertime?
I guess I don't, and for Carlisle, I don't consider that much of a grade. But
Uh-huh.
and that is purely, it's my thoughts. That's not that much of a grade, considering some other places that I can think of in town right off the top of my head that are much steeper where we stop. I think you stop where you need to stop to keep people safe, and I don't think this is, well, and also, nothing we ever do has to be permanent either.
No,
If we
true.
find this is not working, this does not help, and in fact hurts, then we can undo it, but the best information I have, our speeds in Carlisle are not going down. I mean, I'd be happy to do the study and move that thing right to the corner. We put it at a spot where, the closest spot we could without the trailer being in peril.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily
But
easy.
I also we're getting from a neighbor, one of our neighboring towns, some speed devices that will not be out in the open, so to speak. But I wanted it twofold. Number one, so people would start thinking about that. Oh, I just went by this 25-mile-an-hour zone. Oh, and there's that lighted sign and they're still going by, on average, at a clip significantly above the speed limit. But I would hope it would kind of put it in people's mind, then they would see this and realize, oh, this is not best. But I hate to generalize, but a lot of our folks that we
No,
get flying through town are people who drive those roads regularly.
A revenue opportunity.
Yeah.
What was the nature of the two accidents at that location?
So, nothing outlandish. Nobody was seriously injured, but they were intersection related, with people not knowing what to do when they got there, in essence. If we really want to do something statistically significant, there were 4 deer struck within 200 yards of that intersection, 4 different times. So we could put fences up and keep the deer from running out, and that would actually, but in seriousness, there were 2 collisions that were intersection related, and neither one had serious bodily injury. It seemed like, folks lost control of their vehicles right at that spot.
Were they at all weather related?
One was weather, one had a weather component, and the other did not.
And so you say, I think, noticed in here somewhere that you said that, I thought that you said that you would also ask the consultants to take a look at that intersection when that process starts. Did I read that in here somewhere?
If I didn't, I should have, because I thought that, but it's just, I don't know if that's gonna be on the list. I think we were pretty specific in what we were asking them for and what they had money to do when we met with them here.
Oh, yeah, it was the last sentence of the first paragraph. That you'll incorporate your review and recommendations within, when appropriate to the project. That to me, I thought meant that you would bring this up to them and
Yes.
ask them, was this
It's
the
a
right
good
thing to
idea.
do?
Yep.
And when would you be putting this into place?
I think when you folks say that this is okay with you, because you're the ones that do it, but for a timeline, like they want to get the driveway thing functioning in the next couple of weeks. So I exchanged emails with their builder tonight, and he's been in and out of there quite a bit, and he said, if you want me to write a letter to tell you that people come outbound at way too high a speed that I can barely get out of there, and I'll be happy to tell you that. And I said, I'll just consider your email, your endorsement of this idea.
We don't have any road cut bylaws or things like that on,
Road cut?
yeah, there's,
What does that mean?
well, that means
Is
that
like a driveway permit?
permit, yeah.
There is a driveway permit.
Yeah. there
Yeah,
is.
that came up with the, with this other matter, where technically you have to go to the
I thought
building
planning-
commissioner and get a permit
That's
to
what
put,
the
to
planning-
cut in a
or
driveway.
planning or, but the reason I'm asking that is because, I live in another location, it was on Route 62, and you did have to have, road cut permits, and they wanted to have a lot of information about sightlines, because it's also dangerous to put a driveway sometimes in some dangerous locations, or then you get these
Yeah.
signs, blind drives or whatever.
I think that the driveway that's the biggest problem is a very old house.
That's been there since.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
looks like it's been there.
And
It's-
are they
Colonial
moving that
times.
further away, or are they
They
moving it
can't-
closer?
they're-
They just had never used it.
They just have not,
When they
never used it,
moved
but
in-
now they're starting to use it, is that,
When they moved in, they were worried about it and I think they thought about moving it, but it wasn't practical to move it anywhere because of how far they had to be away from other property lines and
Yeah.
everything.
yeah,
And so I think they then just made this gentleman's agreement in order to get around it.
but no, so they're going to use their original road cut. then.
So, I guess, you know, I'm really conflicted about this because it's a pretty big change. I mean, what if we were to approve this for, you know, like a 6-month period of time and come back and let us know, hey, is this really working? And that, you know, that kind of gets us past the, well, I don't know whenever the study is,
Yeah,
when the
is
study might start.
It's a good,
Oh, the study, we've got our notice to proceed, that's gonna be ongoing
Oh, yeah,
over the next few months, yeah.
Okay, so if
Most
we
of
said it
summer.
was 6 months to see how it goes or something.
We could do.
But I guess I also want to
90
ask if there's
120
anybody
days.
in the audience who is here to talk about this issue? Okay, if you could please come up to the microphone that doesn't exist.
microphone that doesn't exist.
Take my chair.
You could just sit,
Oh, the second chair.
yeah,
works.
and just state your name and your address, and then.
Sure.
The reason why the microphone's there is so people on the TV can hear you, it doesn't amplify your voice.
Sure, okay. My name is Trevor Snorick Yates. I live at 564 East Street, which is the old house that in question. So, yeah, so, I mean, I think that a couple issues, as the chief mentioned, it's an extremely blind driveway for us to come out, extremely dangerous for us. The previous owners had owned both the small Cape as well as that house. It had all been part of the same property up until they subdivided it and we bought one house and then they sold the other house. At the time, they had said that they had tried to get a right-of-way for us, or at least
Easement?
an easement of some sort, yeah. But they said that they weren't able to, but it always worked out fine. With the new owners coming in, they had plans for sort of new construction and stuff like that. And I think we always knew that we were borrowing someone else's driveway. So I guess a couple issues have been the school bus won't pick up our daughter in front of the driveway because they say it's too dangerous. The post office won't let us put a mailbox in front of our driveway because they say it's too dangerous. And then, you know, even with a mirror coming out of that driveway, it's you know, it's sort of a bit of a roll of the dice every time we go out, so.
Okay. All right, thanks. Claude?
I'm just wondering, you know, I'm thinking technology here, you know, if one had, you know, you mentioned the mirror, that got me thinking. One could imagine a device, something as simple as a webcam or whatever, that would give you a view coming, you know, much further along so that you could be sure, well, there's nobody between East Riding, for
East Riding.
instance, and there, and then you know, unless they're going 120 miles an hour, that, you know, you have plenty of time to pull out.
Seems like yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, you know, so it could be, you know, like a webcam, or it could be something that's digital that just, you know, radar detector essentially that says, okay, there's nothing there.
Right.
Because really, so the problem has sort of narrowed down to this particular issue, sightlines for a driveway that's sort of grandfathered in, but probably wouldn't have passed muster if we'd had you know, if it had to go through the usual process for a driveway cut. So there's not much we can change about that, but if we pile a little bit of technology on top of this, that might, you know, make it very comfortable, because even if there's a stop sign there, that doesn't guarantee, because somebody may just blow through the stop sign, may not see it. You know, I mean, whereas I would be more comfortable having confirmation that I can see down that road and, okay, there's nobody there.
Yeah.
That might be true for the resident, Claude, but if he has a guest who doesn't have that particular
Well,
thing in their car, you know, how does he
Well,
get that?
it might be an installed it might be something that's right opposite the driveway
Okay.
with an indicator,
So
for
you're gonna put a
instance.
monitor
And-
across there and a camera, and we're gonna maintain that and keep it clean and?
Well,
No.
yeah, I'm just throwing out ideas here.
Yeah. No,
It's
that's
not
great, but-
necessarily, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
these devices, it doesn't have to be expensive. You could make it so that there's, that it gives you a positive indication, right? So that if it fails, you see, oh, it's not working now, okay. I have to resort to my own roll of the dice, or I have to get it fixed.
So when you exit the driveway currently, the sight line actually does show to the sort of top of the hill. So if depending upon where the placement of the stop sign was, there you would at least see the sort of windshield and up of the car that was coming up. So there's actually a pretty good sight line. You can see you move up, you go past the hedge, and you can actually see. So it's really just, it's not so much an issue of the sight line as much as just the speed with which you can actually see someone coming. So if there was a stop sign, as you said, it's possible that people wouldn't stop. And hopefully if they did put in a stop sign, there'd be a certain amount of public education that would need to be done. And
Do we know if having a stop sign there would mitigate the issues that the post office and the school has?
I've not been in touch with them, but
That would be interesting to know. Because if they're not satisfied, then arguably maybe you shouldn't be. The other thing is if somebody's in a Triumph Sprite or an MG Midget,
A Miata.
They're
on
not
the
going
road.
all that fast.
That's true, that's true too.
They shouldn't be, I agree, but
Yeah.
I know in our conversations with the post office, they had said that we had asked to put it in front of our driveway, and they said it was too dangerous to stop in front of our house because of the vehicles coming up the hill behind. So we could ask, my guess would be that if cars were stopping, that they wouldn't see that as a risk to their mail truck stopping, but.
But
Well-
the post office presumably, I would guess, has a lot of data, and their policies and procedures encompass, I would imagine, a wealth of knowledge about these kinds of situations. And if they come on one side or the other of the issue, you'd hope that it was backed by a wealth of knowledge about how effective, stop signs are in this kind of a case.
You might have. I guess the last thing I'd mention is I went on the U.S. Department of Transportation on their website to look at all of the sort of traffic intersection studies that have been done, and they've got a summary page with a good 300 to 400 traffic studies on intersections specifically spanning like the last 40 years. And as I scrolled through all of them, there were so many different unique situations for different kinds of intersections, and I kept looking for one that was similar to ours, and I got through all, say, 350 or so, and I didn't find one. And then I guess it dawned on me that it's probably fairly rare that you have a three-way intersection with two stop signs and not one on the third side, because I would guess that most people wouldn't think to do that to begin with, just from a predictability standpoint, I guess.
Yeah, I think that, for me, that's one of the things that troubled me, certainly when I first was experiencing the stop sign, but also still troubles me a bit when I'm at that intersection and I'm inbound. Sometimes I forget they don't have a stop sign, and somebody will be coming up, and I'm not sure, wait, are they gonna go onto Rutland?
Yeah.
And they don't have to stop if they're going onto
And
Rutland.
they don't necessarily signal.
And
Yeah.
I may pull out thinking that there's a stop sign, and, so,
I agree, it's a very unusual intersection. I have that same feeling.
yeah, you don't kinda know what to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Chief Fisher, what would you think about doing it as a 6-month thing, or, just to be reevaluated, or do you think there's any benefit in doing that?
Well, I do, because I think with this kind of reluctance, number one, but looking for significance, maybe we just put it on the agenda for one of your meetings 6 months from now, and we'll take a look at it with a hard eye on re-examining it, with an equal commitment to take it out if it's not been working. But, I mean, I agree that a three-way intersection's not common, but it's less complicated than a four-way. I mean, when you're in driver's ed, you learn if there's a car to the right of you, they have the right. I mean, we teach kids that in driver's ed, and, you know, folks should remember if they arrive at those stop signs at the same time, that the person to the right has a right of way, things like that. I don't think that because it's a three-way confounds it. I think it is unique because of the lack of visibility you have. It's almost irresponsible to go around that corner at any kind of clip at all. And you probably saw it from the speeds. Almost everybody's traveling well above the speed limit. Not even like a little. You know,
Yeah,
so
just-
it's not just,
You know, I think the
not
people
just
that-
his driveway that's the problem here. It's that
Yeah,
corner.
I think also the people that are going up East Street and then actually turning left onto Rutland, they very often tend not to signal because they kind of cruise right through. And I think making a stop sign will also encourage them to signal their intentions for what their next move is going to be. So I don't know how those accidents happen, but I bet you it was somebody going left on Rutland and the other guy figuring he was going to keep on going straight, and they got faked out.
Yeah, so just for everybody in the audience here, so there were about 2015 vehicles that were recorded. 1,694 of them were above the speed limit. I'm just guessing here because I don't have the actual numbers, but it looks like somewhere around 325 or so were between 0 and 25. Maybe a little over 100 were between 26 and 30. You know, it's a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. There were about 430, I'm going to guess, that were going 31 to 35. And almost 800 of them were going 36 to 40. And this is in a 25.
Even if they thought it was still 35.
Right, even if they're still speeding.
Still speeding.
And then almost exactly the same number of cars that were going between 0 and 25 were going 41 to 45. And then the 46 to 50 and 51 to 5 are so small, I don't know what the numbers are, I can't really tell. You know, I'm just reinforcing what Chief Fisher was saying, is that it's a significant speed through that intersection. So I guess, you know, and it is, I mean, it is confusing to me as a three-way, but only one of them not having the stop sign, is really confusing. This is why I'm conflicted.
It seems to me that it certainly, if I lived there and was trying to make a left-hand turn out of my driveway, you know, I'd sort of hold my breath doing it, knowing what's coming at me from the left going outbound. But that said, I'd also, you know, I would hope that if we put a stop sign there, it is going to impede traffic flow through Carlisle in the morning. There's no question about that. A lot of people won't like it. That's tough because this is a safety concern. But I'd be curious to know if putting a stop sign there would also mitigate the concern of the school busing and also the post office.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess rather than putting an end time on it, maybe we just, you know, what if we consider approving it, but ask the chief to come back in about 6 months and just give us some feedback on how it's going, and that way it's not stopping in 6 months. It's just let us know how it's going in about 6 months.
So we'll coordinate on a date.
You know, like,
September, October's the plan.
you know, we should hear about complaints about it, you know, people who are happy with it and how it's working out.
Yeah, maybe some speed measurements before and after. Taken, you know.
Well, we've got the before ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we just.
And did anybody else, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Did anybody else want to say anything about this? Okay, so I'll,
I think it would be good to hear from our resident on East Street in 6 months, or sooner,
yeah, but
it
we're
would
just
be good
asking
to
for a
reach out.
report back. We're not saying that we're gonna put up a speed limit, a stop sign for 6 months.
Right.
We're gonna put up the stop sign and just, in 6 months, let us know complaints and things like that you may have gotten, people positive about it and how you feel that it's done it.
Could we again flag the 25-mile-an-hour zone to kind of emphasize that?
Okay.
And then just beyond that, I don't know, maybe either before or after or somewhere, the stop ahead sign and then the stop, so that we, really give people a chance to understand that they're supposed to slow down and that they better expect to stop very shortly, because that 25-mile-an-hour zone has been
Right,
totally
and also-
useless up until now.
And I guess also just, remember that it's a new stop sign, don't expect people are stopping right away.
Yeah, well, anyway.
'Cause people are
So-
gonna fly through it.
I move,
Yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
make the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the installation of a stop sign on East Street, eastbound, at the intersection with Rutland Street as recommended by the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, presented on April 24th, 2018.
Second.
And request the police chief to give us a report in 6 months.
Well, I didn't think that,
Yeah.
you want that as part of the motion?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, and with the additional request that the police chief check in with us after about 6 months to report on the situation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Von Roskin, aye.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you all for your time.
And let's see if we can get some pedestrian walkway through there too.
Well, yeah, that's a Pathways Committee traffic.
Yeah, well, because
Yeah.
you've got that nice wide thing, and then it, disappears to nothing
Yes.
in a
Okay,
dangerous
so
area.
Colonial Power,
Yeah, we're,
Yes, there he is.
here. Remember Mark Campadonna of Colonial Power Group, who's
hello again.
How are you?
advising us in the process of municipal aggregation, which we've had kind of fits and starts, and he's back here to tell us about how the market looks now and whether it's favorable to go forward. The state did, the Department of Energy did approve our plan some time ago.
Correct.
You were in here maybe 6-8 months ago to tell the board it wasn't, the outlook wasn't favorable to.
Yeah, I don't even think that long ago.
It might have been like 4 months ago, but
December or
yes,
something like that.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark Capadona, 277 Main Street, Marlboro, Mass., Colonial Power Group. So just wanted to come back in front of you and give you kind of an update of what was coming. So the capacity issue that had kind of fallen upon NEMA, which is where the load zone that Carlisle sits in, that's northeastern Mass, there's a southeastern Mass load zone, and there's a west central Mass zone. So just think of it as kind of 3 quadrants, and they try to break that up by in total customer base. So kind of Boston and above, heading up to the North Shore, that's NEMA's load zone. SEMA down below and all over the Cape. And think about it from 495 all the way west is WCMA. So there's some good news, meaning that your load zone was very high in the last 12 months. The good news is now SEMA it has the high capacity. The problem is everyone's capacity is very high. So I do believe that there'll be an opportunity for Carlisle to get out in the marketplace because your capacity is less than SEMA's. So right now, everyone in the SEMA load zone for Eversource East or NSTAR has been subsidizing you. That's one of the reasons we didn't take you out to bid, because we never would have been able to beat that subsidization. Well, now you're actually helping out the people that live in SEMA. So it's a good time for you to get out there in the marketplace and see what the market has to offer you. In the upcoming weeks, we're going to do kind of a two-phase thing. We'll have what we'll call indicative pricing, and that indicative pricing is nothing more than an actual picture of the marketplace. And what I did do, just so people could see, Tim, what you're kind of up against here. not that it's a, I just wanted to kind of show, I'm sorry, the select board what the, so on this, do you need one? So, what I have in front of you is simply just a pricing matrix, just to kind of show you some of what Tim's going to be looking at anyone that you decide to have with you that day, Tim. I'm happy to come here and have a meeting, or we can do it over the phone. But so a week before, we do something called indicative pricing. What is indicative pricing? That's just to show everyone where the market is, close to, so there are kind of no real big surprises when we do get out to the marketplace. This is going to be eerily similar or exactly like what you're going to be looking at. Up the top is nothing more than terms by months, and all I did was make this so that nobody knows who the suppliers are or what town we were talking about, so I just made it generic. But it just shows you what would be a 6-month term, and then individual, I'm heading across the page, the start term and end term, how many months that is, supplier 1, supplier 2, supplier 3, supplier 4, and basic service. So what you're looking at here was last winter's N-Star's rate was 12,673. Pricing for each one of the for the communities by each one of the suppliers. I think it's fairly interesting to take a look, because this is actual live pricing. Take a look at the kind of the difference in price. Supplier 2 has a price of 10.5, but I see pricing as high as almost a penny higher, or 11.3 with supplier 2. Where things get very interesting for me, and I believe you're going to see this exact thing, is look at the difference between 6 months and 36 months. The difference is not great, and it's also what I would call a backwardated curve, meaning that the pricing in the first 6 months due to capacity is actually higher than 36 months out. So what I can tell you is the current futures market for energy is very flat, and capacity is kind of your driver. So the bad news is as you can see from this indicative pricing, this was back in right around the November timeframe, probably October or September of 2017. Pricing is going to be high for the next few years, and that's due to the capacity issue. And I should explain, sometimes I forget, so I apologize. Capacity is nothing more than they need to make sure that when you and I flip the switch, that there's supply on the line. There's nothing more than that. We continue to remove generation assets from our grid. Brayton Point, 1,600 megawatts worth of coal. As soon as the stack is gone, it may be shut down now. And Plymouth Nuclear, those both shut down, so we lose 2,200 megawatts. Well, we have to replace those megawatts to make sure that there is no rolling brownout. So what does capacity do? It's a guaranteed payment to the supplier. That means they get paid every month, whether they run or not, that they can basically finance their plant on. So in SEMA right now, the big driver last year for NEMA was footprint up in Salem. They built I think it's an 1,100 megawatt plant. It used to be a coal stack, and now it's a combined cycle natural gas plant. Unfortunately, they missed some dates, and the last time I checked, they still weren't up and running, but we do expect them to be up shortly. That means that when you and NEMA flip the switch, there will be power there. The same phenomenon or removal of old generation and updated with new generation happens down in SEMA, a place in Rhode Island called Berryville. They have an 1,100 megawatt combined cycle natural gas plant going in. So what does that mean for you for pricing? High prices for the next 2.5 years. By high, National Grid just came out with their basic service pricing starting in May, and their summer pricing is at 10.8. Normally that would be a winter price. So I expect, just given what I've seen, N-Star or Eversource East to be even higher, because you don't have a load zone with a lower capacity price. So everyone in Eversource is either NEMA and SEMA. Those are the two high zones. So I do expect, and this is not good news for anyone, myself included, pricing will be high. But I do expect there to be room in the marketplace to be below what the Eversource price will be. If I was going to give an estimate, I would probably say that it's going to be 11.5 plus for a summer rate. Atrocious. Just, we need to do something, because it's fairly unsustainable at 11 and 13 cents. So if this summer is 11 cents, can you imagine what this coming winter is going to be? So just a warning, but that doesn't mean there wouldn't be savings vis-a-vis aggregation. That's what we use the marketplace to do, to find out if there's a supplier out there that will serve that. And I think this kind of goes to show, and I'm going to come back to this grid here now, the top grid is standard supply. And you can see all the different pricing for all the different terms. Down below that is a national wind product that's backed up with 100% renewable energy credits out of, say, Texas or Oklahoma. It's a very economical, and I'll go to the lowest pricing, but you can see for supplier 2, it's 10,588 for the standard product. And if you were to buy renewable energy credits, a national wind product, for less than $1 million, you can green that whole load up. And that is 10,638. And that was back in September. Now, if you're looking to do something for main hydro, more likely than not, it's a Mass Class 2 renewable energy credit that you'd be purchasing on behalf of the people looking to get in there. Unfortunately, that supplier, it was in tight demand, did not bid that product. But if you go over to supplier 3, you can see that from the supplier 3 standard price, it cost about $2 a megawatt hour, or 0.2 of a penny extra for, rather than the just below 1/10 of a penny. It's about double the cost for the a main hydro. And then I just wanted to show people we're happy. My goal and my job is to, whatever Carlisle is looking for a green product to bring. So what I said was, okay, if we were to buy 50% more Mass Class 1s, what would that actually do to the price? And as you can see, Mass Class 1s have actually come down in price significantly. What used to cost you and I, or people buying Mass Class 1s, $40, a renewable energy credit, is down around $7 to $11 a renewable energy credit right now. What does that tell us? The state has been extremely generous, and we have built lots of solar, and that's most of, and I do mean most of, your Mass Class 1s. There are other Mass Class 1s. There is wind, there's anaerobic digester, there's waste to energy. Make no mistake about it, there are other Mass Class 1s, but the preponderance of it is solar. So from that standpoint, that's kind of what pricing will look like for Tim on indicative and then final pricing. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we'd be looking at. Go ahead, ask.
Yeah, so your next step would be to get this kind of pricing for us?
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
We would get
and then we could decide what mix we wanted and what we wanted to have as basic and things like that.
So the good news is the week before, you would see actual live pricing, what it would cost for the wind, what it would cost for hydro, and then we can always mix in however, I'm going to say, let's say the 50% more Mass Class 1s was too high. I could bring that down to 35%. I could bring it down to 25%. I can bring that down to any number you're happy with until it fits into your pricing scheme. Understanding that although everyone would like to have 100% renewable energy, given pricing, everyone here has a fiduciary responsibility to the residents and participants. So we expect to make adjustments, and we're happy to work with the supplier to make that adjustment if required.
Okay, and so one other question is, the top one here, that's just the standard retail that anybody would be getting?
That would match up specifically to basic service. It has 21% renewable energy. By law, it has to have 21%, 22% now renewable energy in it.
Right. So, but you would be because I'm remembering back to the previous discussions. You would be presenting some renewable options, but you would also be presenting the lowest cost option.
Lowest cost.
Okay.
That's correct.
But
that's correct.
It doesn't look like the standard retail is necessarily the lowest cost, depending upon.
I think you're going to find it hard pressed to find something lower than the 10.588.
Which
one is
supplier
that?
are you looking
Yeah.
at?
Supplier 2. And again, I look at this
supplier
every day,
two.
so it's very
Yeah.
simple.
10,588. Yeah, I agree with that. But on the other hand, 10,638, same supplier, but 100% green, is not that much more expensive when you consider that what we were getting from NSTAR or wherever was 12,673. So, I mean, we're still saving money.
This is N-Grid, just so you know, but that's the hope for aggregation. And just to give you an idea on the Department of Public Utilities says use around 600 kilowatt hours, and the difference in this price would probably be equal to, it's about 50, it's about 500, about 5 cents per person if they used the average 600 kilowatts. About 5 cents per person.
Per month.
Per month. Correct. That would be the impact of that.
60 cents per year.
That's correct. For this national wind.
So-
If you use the 600 kilowatts that they say. I feel like that's a little low, but just,
The average bill in Carlisle is larger.
Yeah.
But, you know, that doesn't mean that there isn't a significant population in Carlisle that is in that range.
Right.
Yeah.
over the state, they say use 600 kWh, so.
That's the difference between median and average.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. Okay, so, so your next step would be to, because I don't think, you know, I think the discussion about what we do should happen when we get the actual numbers.
Agreed. I completely agree with you. There's one other thing I just wanted people to remember, because I think this is the thing that it always has me most concerned. Municipal aggregation, opt-out aggregation, meaning everyone on basic service is automatically included. They get a mailing in the mail that, just like this, kind of an apples-to-apples comparison, that they would get to look and make a decision. But everyone would be included unless they opted out. Now, everyone that's on basic service, if you've already made a choice, you wouldn't be part of the mailing, you wouldn't get switched. But I want you to know, it's an opt-out municipal aggregation. I just want to continue to beat that drum.
Right, and so we want to make sure that that gets well advertised in the Mosquito, and can I see that?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
My
One second,
other
it's
question-
actually 2 pages. It would be on one front and back, but
When there are power lines down, and we're in the
That never
aggregated thing.
happens here.
Eversource is still your distribution company.
It's still Eversource.
Yes,
Okay, at the end of the day, still, okay.
they're
that's-
still
that was
responsible.
my big-
yes, they're still responsible. Tim, that's just basically what
Even though they're
everyone,
not supplying, they,
they own no generation since 1997. They had
okay,
to
so
sell it
they're
off.
really, that's just part of the distribution charge.
They're a poles and wires company.
Yeah, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And this would be on one page, Tim, but I couldn't get it to print.
Lots of trucks. Just never in Carlisle.
So just one last little thing so you guys can get on with your meeting. If you decided to move forward, there would be a 30-day opt-out. We would do a mailing, there'd be a 30-day opt-out. I'm more than happy to come down and have informational sessions and make sure there's something in the Mosquito, something else on the website, our website. An individual mailing would go to each and every customer. That's the biggest thing we feel like we can do, is make sure that everyone gets the word. The most difficult thing about my job is trying to get people to pay attention to something that they may not be paying attention to at that time.
Okay, and then we select one of these that is the non-opted out standard, but they can select something different if they want to.
Well, you would make both choices. You would say, I'm just going to say, in that scenario, with the pricing, so let's just say you said your basic product was going to be, you're going to have to make a decision. So if you wanted to go green, meaning you could say the base product was going to be this green. It just, everyone's eyes kind of lit up when you realized that it was so easy to green things up. You might say everyone is in the 10638, and that's the opt-out product. The standard product, if you wish, you can opt out of this and opt into a standard brown product at the 10588. Or you could reverse that. You could say that your base product that everyone's going to have to opt out of could be that standard product, and if they wish to increase the green component, they can opt into that green.
And can they opt out of all of this and just stay with what they have now?
100% yes.
Okay.
The good
So
news.
they have, I guess they have 3 choices. Yeah.
That's correct. And just so you know, Tim made sure that the plan had, let's just say I think the lights are going to go out. It never would in this scenario, but let's just say they're concerned. And 3 months later, they're talking to their neighbor, geez, I'm saving so much, this, so forth and so on. They can opt back in. There's never a fee or penalty. They can opt back out. They can opt back in. We can only switch them on a meter read, but it's not like all you're truly bringing is a choice that they haven't had prior.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, Claude, you had something?
Yeah, one thing to be aware of is that, as Bob Zock pointed out in our Energy Task Force meetings, the number of people who actually make a decision to opt out is very small. So it's like a few percent. In other words, like 90+% of the people don't pay any attention to this and just. So if we change the default product to a green product, that means that the town will all of a sudden be consuming a lot of green energy, 90% wise. If we make the default option, as you just mentioned, the basic service the way it is now, then will be at 22% instead of,
Right.
green energy,
Yeah.
as opposed to if we make it 100%. So, if one is concerned about changing our sort of environmental impact to a green product, our CO2 emissions, if that's of concern, then this is a very, very high leverage point. The
Yeah.
decision about what is the default. It's higher than all the work the Energy Task Force has done since we became a green community combined.
No question,
It's huge.
no question.
Okay? This one very simple decision that may hinge on, we don't know the numbers now, but at least in some cases, it seems it can be 60 cents a year for the
Yeah.
average bill.
I think what I'm hearing Claude say is that we should have that one be the primary one and let them opt out of that and go to the brown rather than the other way around.
I want to see the numbers
Yeah.
first.
Yeah,
I
but
know,
I mean,
yeah.
but I mean, if
Yeah.
that were true.
Yep.
Too bad you won't be on the board, would we?
Yeah, well, that's why,
That's why I bring it up
I
now.
have another question about the period, because there's 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and of course, the cost seems to go down as you go longer in term,
Yes.
but what is the
And not
downside?
consistently, which is weird.
What,
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I guess I'd like to have a little discussion about
Yeah.
terms. How,
So some of this is an old curve, right? This is from September of 17. But believe it or not, the curve is very flat right now. So you can lock in, energy prices are very low, and I know this sounds odd because energy prices overall are up, and that's due to capacity. What used to cost us 3/10 of a penny now costs us 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So it is very expensive now to procure energy as a whole, but the actual component of energy, the combined cycle natural gas plant or the hydroelectric or wind, that price is down. It is around $32 a megawatt hour, ATC around the clock. So, you can see, there's nothing here to change that. I don't see any dynamic changing our energy in New England. So overall, that's a very flat curve. You would normally expect to get some risk premium when you get out there 36 months. But as you can see, some of that capacity comes off and pricing even gets a little bit more competitive. So I would say you could certainly take a look to the longer terms. A lot of our clients have done 36 and 24 months just to get over this next 12 to 18 months when capacity spikes. It hasn't spiked yet. It does start in June that everyone's capacity is very high. It stays from 2018, June of 18, through June of 19. And then we get a little bit of a reprieve. It steps down from about $9 a kilowatt month to around $7 a kilowatt month. And then as we get out 2 years, you start to get back to some kind of normalcy, as we would call it.
But this is a kind of a guaranteed rate. If we sign up for 24 months,
Guaranteed.
then this is our rate, but rates are going to go up. But we're not paying the higher rate.
That's correct. You would lock into that rate. That's correct.
Okay.
and
Some
if it
rates,
were to go down, can we then change it, or are we locked in?
you would be locked in. You could certainly speak to the supplier about doing something, but I would say just stick with your decision, myself.
Or I guess as a consumer, I could opt out and go to,
And we have hundreds of consumers that every 6 months they call to opt in and out of the program.
okay, Claude?
So this capacity thing, the way I understand it, is that these charges here, this is all energy, not delivery, right? So this isn't Eversource, this is, somebody else. But there's sort of two big components to this. One is this capacity charge that is being referred to, and what that is money that they charge to have plants available to handle the peak demand, which occurs typically in August, in the afternoon. And that charge apparently is universal across all of these suppliers.
That's correct.
It's not, it well, it's almost a different market, actually.
It is a
right?
different market.
It's a whole different market, and there's a whole process by which people bid their capacity and say, well, I'm willing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the energy piece, which is variable, because, you know, the guy making the electricity with solar, it's a different process, you know, windmills or photovoltaics versus somebody who's burning natural gas or coal or, you know, so what's happening is here in New England, the number of plants, the capacity to generate electricity is sort of shrinking. And that's going to push up that component of the charge. It's distributed across everybody. Everybody has to charge that. They can't, you know, it's not like, well, I don't care, I'm solar, I don't have to worry about that. No, you do have to worry about that because you have to guarantee your energy. So there's this other, so I think, I'm trying to clarify that because I don't know if it was, is entirely clear. And so because Pilgrim's coming offline and a bunch of these other coal plants, that's a ton of capacity that's just evaporating, and you have to build something else, which you can imagine with site plan review and all the other environment, that's not easy to do. So there may be some gaps in capacity that we're going to suffer through, which means that the prices are going to spike. Mm-hmm. So it might make sense to go for, you know, a 24, 36 month kind of guaranteed thing to sort of, you know, transition through that period with relative, you know, being buffered against that those kind of spikes.
Okay, great. All right, so you're gonna come up with new numbers, and it seems like we need to do this pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I don't know if Denise has given you dates yet for, so I would expect within the next, so what we want to do is we want to wait until Eversource, so Eversource East goes out, give me 1 second, I'll give you the actual date, in May, and it's going to be, so they go out on 5/8. What we were kind of hoping to do is maybe 5/15, that way there you'll know what Eversource's rate is to beat, because we want to make sure that we start the program on that kind of, that printout, there's going to be an apples-to-apples comparison. That we would be able to show you, okay, I'm just going to make up a number, 11.5 is the summer rate, you know, whatever the aggregation rates come in, here's what the town's rate would be, and then on May 22nd, we hope to have final pricing for you to sign off on. And again, that doesn't mean that you have to sign off on it, just means it is live and can be signed off on.
That's what we're considering.
Yes.
Okay. And we also talked about having Mark meet with members of the energy task force that are interested and have some questions. In the interim, we can set something up that, some of them are here tonight.
No, I think it's a great idea, you know.
Might have some questions now, but,
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to come back any night and meet with the energy task force. You know, that's where the incubator, that's why I think aggregation wins. We get more ideas into the pool, and certainly worthwhile listening to, no question about it.
Next time.
All right, yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, if anybody wants to talk, you know, please get up, but I think it's the next meeting when we actually have the rates, when we're really diving into the details and making the decisions.
okay.
So I think the only thing that needs to happen, and you may already have the authority, is somebody needs the authority to sign on what would be May 22nd, to sign off on that, on that pricing. That's the only step that's
That
left.
speaks to our calendar, doesn't it? Because we talked about it.
But are we committing?
Someone has to have the authority to sign. Whether or not he decides to sign or she decides to sign, that's completely up to the group or the person. If the person comes in at 13, please don't sign.
Uh-huh.
Because we wouldn't want to set the program above. This doesn't make sense.
Right, so I think we need to have another Board of Selectmen meeting before we
Right,
sign
well,
anything.
that would be whoever the chairman of the Board of Selectmen is at that point in time.
Sure as hell will not be me.
They would have that signature authority.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay, all right.
But we certainly have a couple, you know, you'll have actual pricing on, hopefully, the way it will work on the 15th, and you'll have the basic service price to go up against to say, this is what we're kind of looking at.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure that I understand, because what I was saying before was that we would get one of these, right?
Yes.
With what our actual pricing is, and
Yes,
then
you
we
will.
would, and I was saying that we as a board would sit down and figure out which one we want, but I think what I'm hearing is that that needs to be signed before we meet next.
The only problem is I don't know when you meet next.
Okay, but the 22nd is when we're signing which of these things we would be doing.
That's correct. On the 15th, and I just want to make sure I'm telling you the correct date, sir. On the 15th would be that, I'll call it indicative pricing, so that you could look at it, have a discussion, take a look at the terms, and that would be 1 week prior, so that you could see all of those pricings, would give everyone plenty of time for discussion, to make a decision.
Right, so it seems like
So
the 15th,
you give us this.
First time, yes.
Okay.
and the 15th is the proposed next Board of Selectmen meeting, so we can't do that, because that would be the day we were getting it.
No, well, actually, you could, because we'll have pricing in the afternoon, and then you can look at it that evening.
Yeah.
So it would be fresh
We'll-
that day.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. I mean, we're gonna get back to
That's nothing
that.
official that day.
Yeah, it wouldn't be official pricing.
Nope, nope. Just a
That
test
wouldn't come
run.
out for another week. You
That's
could-
exactly correct.
So it's a test run, and then the next week, the actual numbers come out, but we
Yes.
need to sign on that day?
On that day, we have like a window. I'll have pricing hopefully by noon or 1, and it has to be signed off on by 4 o'clock so they can set their hedge, go out in the marketplace and buy the energy for the town. If you decided to move forward, it doesn't require you to.
Right, the town can take a pass. if
Absolutely,
it's not-
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
I think the goal would be to just get our ducks in a row and then be ready to sign off.
Set a threshold, and say if it,
Bill,
Right.
come on up, Bill.
if the differential is this, then
Yeah.
this.
Exactly.
Yes, sir, just, I'm Bill Russo, 155 Wolf Rock
All right,
Road.
gentlemen, excuse me. Dan? Oh, excuse me.
Wolf Rock Road, and Chair of the Energy Task Force. And the Energy Task Force would be very happy to assist in making the decisions on this, even if you don't have the meetings and all, we can meet and recommend to Tim what mix and what pricing would be.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, yes.
Bob Zog, 923 North Road. I just wanted to comment that I think what Mark just confirmed is that by the time you see the pricing and time you have to make, sign a contract or pass is very short. So this issue about getting community input on what is the default offering is really short. I mean, with the time where you actually know what the price differential is between renewable and low cost, and then the time you have to make a decision or just decide to pass until the next time, and it'll happen the same way the next time this comes up. There's this issue, it's almost as if you have to decide in advance what if any price differential you would accept, or the community would accept. And it's fine for the Energy Task Force to provide input, but we're not the community, we're just representatives when it comes
Right.
down to how much is green worth.
Right, I think they're absolutely right, and I think that's why probably the 15th is the right day for us to meet. Make sure that people know that we're meeting about this topic, and then authorize somebody to sign if the new numbers are,
In line.
Exactly.
are reasonably in line with what we've seen and doesn't throw anything off.
But in some sense, the indicative pricing, I think you have to basically pretend that doesn't exist almost and say, well, if we have, only 60 cents difference or some threshold, right, between the 100% green option and this, then we'll okay it. If it's larger than that threshold, we won't.
But I think the indicative, you're right about the decision to sign or not,
Mm.
but I think the indicative pricing is gonna give us the information we need to decide what the mix might be.
I guess there's also the term issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and the term.
Yeah.
So
It's-
we'll meet about it on the 15th,
Okay.
and,
I would keep that agenda really light,
Yes. Well, it should be, hopefully.
in more
Um,
ways than one,
yeah.
because I think we'll have a lot of things to wrestle with
right,
on that one.
like numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But hopefully it should be a light agenda.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Anybody else wanna talk to this?
No.
All right, do you wanna take over, or do you want me to keep
I
going?
don't care.
All right, I'm gonna keep going.
Look at you, control freak.
Out.
Ooh, gladly.
Okay, so now we're gonna take, position votes on, the annual town meeting articles, and we're also going to do assignments, for who will move each of the articles. Wayne, do you wanna come up, or do you wanna just sit back there?
Do you need me for anything?
Well, we might, so you might as well be close.
I would have let you sit
Charlene?
back there.
Charlene, come on up.
Just so you know.
Tim, do you want to lead us through this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Article 1, is the consent agenda or the approval by town meeting of the process by which Articles 2 through 8 are essentially bundled and handled in a single affirmative motion.
Is this yours or mine?
So normally, one member of the board is assigned to the consent agenda article and the articles that are contained within it, 2 through 8, so. And normally you do support all the items in the consent agenda. So you need to
Should we
take a
go?
vote.
Yeah, should we go? So do we approve them as individual articles? I mean, support them as individual articles or as the consent agenda?
We should probably take a position on them individually, but
Okay.
they handle quite a lot.
All right.
here and
So let's go through these. Article 1 is the consent agenda.
Well, yeah, we don't usually take a position on that, though.
Yeah.
Well, do you favor handling the first 8 articles in that fashion? then
All right,
you
yeah.
support that.
Do you stop and say, as,
You in this meeting could handle the first 8 as a consent agenda, so you support them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Right.
I guess that's a good point, Wayne. Does anybody oppose supporting Articles 1, 2, 3, 1 through 8 as a consent agenda? Okay, is there a motion to handle Articles 1 through 8 as, actually, I'm actually asking for Articles 2 through 8 as the consent agenda, which is Article 1.
Article 1 establishes the process, and then 2 through 8
Okay.
are what's contained within it.
Is there a motion to accept Articles 1 through 8 as a consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, Brown eye?
Kissing your eye.
read I?
Yes.
Oscar Lilloye? I don't know, how does this go? Do I all of a sudden become the low man on the totem?
Yeah,
You know, well,
You
not
weren't here.
exactly, because you're.
Yeah,
your name
right.
starts
Do I even
with
get a
an
vote
All right.
anymore? Okay.
Claude?
No, Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, it passes, so we all support the consent agenda and the articles inside.
You want to assign one member to those?
Sure, I'll assign the chair,
The acting chair or the current chair?
the current chair.
Damn.
All right.
I think it makes sense.
I think we should just give everything to Claude.
Okay, Article 9. Actually, I'm taking over from you, Tim. Let's keep it.
Okay, well, Article 9 are
Hey, look
the
at you,
current
jeez.
fiscal year budget
Right to your
transfers.
head.
And you'll see the accounts from which funds will be transferred and the ones that are currently running a deficit or are expected to run one by year's end, where the money's gonna end up, and it balances, fortunately.
Yeah, it's always a plus.
That's right.
Okay, well, I move that the Board of Selectmen recommend approval of this article, Article 9.
Is there a second? Luke seconds. Any further discussion?
I can actually
Okay,
move and-
all those in favor, Brown eye?
Kissing your eye.
Read I?
Oscar Lilloye.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, and anybody want to take that one? I'll take it.
Well, I mean, all
Oh.
you say is,
You just
That
read
we-
what's in the motion handbook when we get it.
oh.
Yeah.
okay.
Not much to it. yeah.
All right, so I'll take 9.
All right.
It's easy.
Article 10 is the rescission of instruments of debt that were authorized but unissued. Essentially taking that debt off of the town's books because we're not going to issue it. So there are 2 kind of cleanup items in this article. We're sending $204,000 in borrowing authority
What was that originally?
Yeah.
so that we can borrow more money.
Nice.
Yes.
But what was that authorized for?
The septic management program was,
Septic
Oh,
the Board of Health had
Yeah.
a loan program for homeowners who had to do repairs to their septic systems.
Tim, can I just,
The last time was authorized at 200,000, but they didn't actually lend out
Yeah.
the funds, so.
I just want to ask a quick question about when we're assigning people. I seem to remember that kind of all the articles that had to do up until like capital were always done by the same person, so that we didn't have to keep flip-flopping
Yeah.
who was doing it. It was just,
It would be best if.
is
the
that
chair
your
just-
recollection?
Once I write it down, it doesn't matter. I'll call on whoever you want.
All right.
You want me to just, I'll keep rolling with it, that's fine, I like to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the way up through Article 11, it
23.
makes sense.
You're just trying to earn chits so that you don't have to do the.
Okay, but I'll make this motion now that the selectmen recommend the support of Article 10.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Read aye.
Oscar Lilloye?
Monroe's gonna,
Okay.
Luke, you should be after Carrie, I think.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
it's-
Oh, I thought we had.
I like being able to second
it's-
stuff.
Theoretically, it's chair, well, never mind.
It's working.
Yeah, it works.
It's
Yeah, it
working.
works, it's fine. I don't-
He's not the chair tonight.
That's right.
Okay,
How many times are you gonna point that out?
I'm gonna keep going, as long as you keep talking. Article 11.
Article 11, the motion's made
Yeah.
by Chairman of the Finance Committee,
Yeah,
Scott Triola, so you just have to take a
we just have to decide to.
position to support or not support.
Is there
the budget.
a motion to support Article 11?
I move that selectmen support Article 11.
Is there a second?
Second?
Is there any further discussion? If anybody out there wants to talk about any of these, please just make sure that I hear you. Okay, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Read aye.
Oscar Lilloye?
Monroe's gonna.
Now, is this where we talk about the
You got a hand.
amendment?
Yes, David.
Yeah, this would be on the
You mean
amendment.
this in stereo?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, why not? We have to do it at some point.
Have any
So,
questions?
the Housing Authority is proposing an amendment to the budget that is taking $7,500 from the existing operating budget and then adding 34,000, I think just 34,000. Is that right? It's just 34,000?
They're adding 41.5.
Right, and, oh, yeah, they're taking that out, and then they're adding $41,500 to the budget for the purposes of hiring a housing coordinator. And we need to take a
In a
position on
different
that.
category.
In a
In a
different
different
category.
category.
Category,
Public assistance, right.
public assistance.
Um,
Now, they're actually taking the 7,500, transferring it to public assistance, and adding 35 to it to get a total of 41,500.
I mean,
That's just to be told, no,
they're recommending reducing the general expense and town hall budget by 7,500, and then creating a new
okay,
budget line item of 41,500 for the
Okay,
town hall.
all right.
Yeah, specifically.
But
for
The
that.
net is,
the net is
34.
30,
That's-
So, I guess I'll speak first to it, which is I oppose it. And I oppose it because I see this as a really good opportunity for the town to, with its starting of the master planning process, with our need that we've spoken about quite a bit for mediation, to make sure that the Board of Selectmen and the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority are all working from the same playbook and we have the same goals. I think that filling a vacant role now before we go through that process just doesn't make sense to me. Going through that process, we could have different needs, or we could change that role, but we'd already have somebody in it. And you don't often have the opportunity to deal with things like this without having somebody in a particular role already. And so that's why I oppose it. It has nothing to do with, being in opposition of, of affordable housing or, economic diversity. It's a timing thing. Let's take a step back. Let's not just automatically fill a role. Let's figure out what our needs are before we start spending money.
Good.
Anybody else have anything?
I have I have no objections to what you just said.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, may I? May I, Mr. Chair? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. No, I agree with all that you said. I mean, in addition, we have worked to figure out a plan to, have, in a sense, a stopgap for as long as needed. With our working group, and, David put a lot of effort into that. We got a lot of input from Tim, we talked with council. I mean, there are definitely ways to cover the needs of the town at the moment, and if the needs were to change dramatically, then obviously we revisit this. But I agree with you completely. You don't spend the money on a position, if the need isn't there, if, what the ultimate goal is, what the ultimate scope of the work is gonna be, if we just don't know. I mean, now is not a time. I mean, we've talked to Board of Health, and we've refused, or rejected, I don't know what the proper term is, they had a request that we've turned down. Library had a request that we turned down. Police, poor Chief Fisher wants the full-time officer. We've turned that down. We refused additional stipends for the fire department. We refused additional hours for Comm. We unfortunately refused additional hours for Charlene. I know that's a sore subject, I'm sorry. But, this whole thing of, I don't know if people have seen the mailings, that housing is being targeted is just not true. We're negotiating Tim's contract, we're negotiating the police chief's contract, we're negotiating the school teacher's contract this year. I mean, all of these things get weighed in to a financial decision and a budget decision. It's not a one-off, we just don't like the housing coordinator position, so we'll just push it off to the side. I mean, this is, one part of a $29 or $30 million budget, that we've looked at. And, to ask the town to spend money for, nice to haves and luxuries at a time when we don't really need them, I don't think it makes sense. Like I said, if we do decide to move forward with a housing project and the need arises, we can address it then. But at the moment, it doesn't make fiscal sense to do
And
this.
I would like to add a couple of things to that. Historically, we did not have a housing coordinator. That housing coordinator position was created by the your predecessor when the Benfield project was decided on, and the town administrator did not have the ability to see that through and needed assistance. So that has always been a town position, it's not a housing authority position, to help the town build that. That project is built. We don't have any further new projects at this point that we need that sort of help with. And so, again, to your point of we're not targeting the housing authority, this is our position, really.
Right. Yeah,
that we don't feel that we need at this point.
Exactly, very good point. It is a position that reports to Tim. And supports both the trust and the housing authority. Claude?
Yeah, I mean, if I can draw an analogy a little bit with solar.
Oh, boy.
Of course.
Well,
Of course. Solar had been, the subsidies for solar had been rather somewhat Byzantine and uncertain. There was a whole auction process and everything, and it made it difficult for developers of solar to get financing because it was uncertain as to what the revenue stream would look like. Recently, they've gone to a model where the state sets a price and it's guaranteed going out, for the length of your project. So that's very easy to understand what your revenue stream is going to look like. And although that price is set, there are components of it that do vary, but the way it's set up, the actual revenue you get is fixed. And one of the reasons, or one of the asks for the sort of housing coordinator is because the housing is also in that same situation. You're building this capital asset. It's going to be lasting for a long period of time. What's the revenue going to look like? How are we going to pay for this, right? It's very uncertain. There are all these different programs, federal, state, there are public-private partnerships and so on and so forth. My feeling is that, a housing coordinator position is not necessarily the best way to get a handle on this very complex environment, and that somebody who perhaps is in a consulting firm that is dealing with this with many other towns involved, where they're sort of specializing in this, would be a better fit than an employee who's part-time. It doesn't make sense to me that that would be the best way to sort of navigate this kind of a process. And maybe at some point in the future, the state will use what they've done in the solar arena in the housing thing and say, look, this is what you get per unit out, this far. So go find your developer, you tell them, here's the money, and it's much more straightforward. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and I think we have to rely on something very different from what one would find in a part-time housing coordinator.
Right. So I would totally agree with you that I think that we can, if something comes up, we can leverage the housing trust money for consultants, and I think that we can make a much more effective use of the money if we are hiring people for particular projects that have a much broader view of what's going on in the state and can help us through the project, rather than somebody who is working just for Carlisle and on a part-time basis. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, especially when we're going through the phase now where we're trying to figure out what exactly is right for Carlisle. Talking with a regional consortium who's worked in multiple towns can say, well, this worked for this town, this worked for that town. We can consider some options. I mean, really now we're kind of, not necessarily going into a blind, but, the goal is really to figure out what's best for Carlisle. And, while the Housing Authority has their focus is really, mixed rental, non-age limited, non-age restricted, and that's fine, that's an option. But it's not the only option, and I think a regional consortium who's seen options in multiple towns and has, gone through them in multiple towns, can say, well, it's worked this way in this town, it worked this way in that town, and can give you that experience. It may not work in Carlisle because of this, or it may work in Carlisle because of that, or, it's just, it opens up, at a point where at a time when we really need input and ideas, and, we need to know what's going on. I think a consortium sort of thing works.
Yeah. And at a point when we don't actually have an incumbent in the position. Carrie, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Well, it seems to me that we're sort of putting the cart before the horse by considering creating this position. And the opportunity that we have is to work together to figure out what a consensus would be for the town through the master planning process about housing, and whether we should be building housing, whether we should be making housing more affordable for seniors. There are lots of ways and paths that we can go to skin this cat, and I think no, we don't have any consensus at this point in town for how to proceed. The last town meeting in 2014, we floated to the town the strategy of building multiple, 40-plus unit houses of affordable rental housing around various places in town, including Banna Davis, and even the notion of doing that did not pass muster in the town. There was no consensus of that as a strategy. So we need to regroup, I think, rebuild a strategy that people can support and feel good about, that is sustainable, that's affordable, and that helps the most people. We can do that. We're a lot of smart people in town, and we're all going to be working together to build a new master plan. So I think anything in ahead of that, getting ahead of that, is really just putting a cart before the horse.
David?
David Friedman, Hutchins Road.
Do you wanna come up so
Yeah.
folks can hear you? Well, you can sit, you can stand dramatically with,
You can have this mic.
you can squat.
I'll kneel before you.
There we go.
There you go.
Supplicant.
It's kind of feeding into Nathan's ego even more.
So, I think I agree with all the points you've made, but I think some of them, it's worth expanding on a bit. The point about the budget, and you mentioned the other boards that, or departments and so on, that, didn't get what they were asking for. But I think you didn't make the leap to the budget process itself, and that I've talked to a couple people who, are supporting this amendment, and first of all, their first comment was, well, it's only $10,000. I don't know where they got that idea, but 3 different people said to me, but it's only $10,000. I'm like, no, it's $41,000. But even at $41,000, people look at that relative to the whole budget, and it's like it's only $41,000. And I think it's important to make the point that it's that against the, I'm guessing, $500,000 of requests, at least, that were requested and not included in the budget. And I think it's important to make the point to town meeting that, well, so why isn't Chief Fisher here asking for what he wants? And why isn't the fire department here asking for what they want? Why isn't the Board of Health here? And all of those. And the reason they're not all there is they're accepting the budget process. And so in essence, if you approve this budget, what you're doing is you're basically saying not playing by the rules is the way to go, because you're basically saying the budget process doesn't work and that we're not going to pay attention to all these things, we're not going to consider them, and we're going to do it that way, which to my mind opens up a Pandora's box. If I'm chair of the planning board next year and I don't get what I asked for, why not go to town meeting? I mean, town meeting has set the precedent that this is now what you can do, and it seems to me that undermines the whole process, and to my mind, that is huge. Secondly, in terms of what they're proposing, I mean, they sort of, made a big deal about how, we can't get into RHSO this year, and again, that's not what the budget item's for. It's for a regional consortium, and it's very broad, so there's plenty of support that can be gotten with that money. But there's been no definition of what this 18 3/4 hours is, what it's for, what the responsibilities are, and again, in terms of process, the groups that came before you looking for money had already gone through, most of them through the personnel board, where there's a series of very intense questioning and whether this is appropriate and all that. That's not going to happen until after this is appropriated, and nobody knows what the input and output of that is. So we have no idea at town meeting what we're approving, because we don't know what the position is. We also, they say it's the same rate that the previous housing coordinator was being paid, but in fact, since it's 18 3/4 hours, it doesn't get benefits, and as I understand it, benefits is a fairly significant part of the benefits that somebody gets. I think it's, another 25, 30-something%.
I think it's around 30.
So in fact, you're hiring somebody essentially to do the same job, but for 30% less pay, and no health coverage. And so you're basically saying that you've got to be a retired person who has a spouse that's already covered under a health care plan in order to take this job, and it's not clear that there's anybody out there that has supposedly whatever the qualifications are, which we don't know, to do this. The point of those things is not that we should debate it at town meeting, it's that you can't debate that at town meeting, and it's another reason why this is totally inappropriate. I think it's important to make that point. The wording of the amendment is to put this on a line item for the housing authority. So this person does not necessarily support the housing trust. It's a housing authority hire. They will answer to the housing authority, and the housing trust has no say over the use of that time. I mean, Steve was, making nice before during the trust meeting and saying, well, of course, we'll consult with you and so on. There's absolutely no reason that they have to consult with you whatsoever. And I think it's important for the town meeting to understand that it's not just about needing mediation. It's, if we're going to hire somebody to support housing, they shouldn't be being hired to support the housing authority. They should be hired to support the housing needs of the town, which is both the trust and the Housing Authority, but that is not what's being proposed. So you should not assume that this person is also supporting the trust, I don't think.
No, I don't.
No, I don't think they
I don't,
did.
I was saying that they did the
did
current
bef-
role they did.
Well,
The-
they
the-
were
the new
supposed to,
one-
but they didn't.
Right,
Yeah.
the new
It
one,
was very
they do
limited.
not.
Right.
And that's why they reported to Tim, because they were worried about housing in general, just
Right.
as what you're saying.
Right, but in any event, I think it's an important point to make. The other question I would have is, once this is, and maybe this is a question for Tim, but once this is a line item for the Housing Authority, my understanding from when I was chair of the planning board is, we have our budget, and if things can move back and forth within our own budget, it's up to us. So that if they chose to hire someone, or, the person they found that was the most qualified could only work 10 hours a week and they hire that person, do they have $18,000 that they can spend on anything they want to spend?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
So, based on, the experience that you've had in terms of trying to get any cooperation from them in terms of what they're spending money on, it's their money, it's their budget. You're basically authorizing them to go off on whatever wild goose chase they want to go on. They've made a big point in their proposal, in the, the things they've sent out to the town, that they have no knowledge about housing, and that's why they need this expert. And the presumption that I think people at town meeting have is that a housing coordinator comes up with ideas. And that's not what a housing coordinator does. A housing coordinator, is responsible, in fact, for coordinating housing that's being managed, which we don't have. But people don't understand that. They think that we need a housing coordinator to keep things moving forward. But again, a housing coordinator does not generate ideas. And that's why the idea of the regional consortium, where you have experts who know how things work, makes a whole lot more sense. Because again, we have no idea what this person's capabilities are, what they would do, how you could hire a generalist that's also has specific knowledge. So it's just,
With no benefits.
with no benefits, yes. I mean, it just completely falls apart. The other thing that nobody mentioned was that the first part of this amendment is to withdraw the money from a regional approach. And the Selectmen and FinCom, and it's in the introduction to the warrant, the FinCom lays out the things that, they're very concerned, as they should be, about maintaining a sustainable budget and a sustainable tax rate in this town, and people at town meeting are concerned about this. And they say, we've talked to the Selectmen and we've agreed that these are the approaches that we need to take. And the two main ones are sharing resources between departments, which is the proposal you've proposed, which is using the administrative staff to solve certain things and using Council on Aging to address other things. And the other one is regional approach, which is what you've proposed. And the first part of the amendment undoes the regional part of it, and then what actually undoes the general, so they're not dealing with the Council on Aging part of it, so they're not taking away that sharing of resources. Anyway, so these are,
The taking away the regional takes away the regional component of it. Adding the money takes away the cross-departmental sharing.
right. It actually legitimizes not sharing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
basically.
really what it does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it basically says, they've taken the position that, the principle that started this was when, as they see it, you refused to give them money to allow Elizabeth to work on a proposal. And that's the way they present it, and that, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But in essence, they're saying, we want to be in that position so that we can do just what we want and we don't have to work with anybody. And essentially, I think that's the last point I want to make, is what they're basically saying is, we don't want to have to collaborate.
Right.
And the thing that you did, and they conflate it, but, all you said was to them, come to us and let's have a meeting where we can discuss what it is you want her to put this time into, because we need to be efficient with this money that's CPA money, and they refused to do that, and they claimed that it was because you were trying to keep them from being able to get the application in time. But what that's about is that they just didn't have their stuff together in time to do that. It's not that you were trying to short-circuit them, but I think, that these are important points to be made. I don't think a lot of people understand it. I think for a lot of people in town, this is going to be a vote. Do you support affordable housing or don't you? They've made an issue of the fact that, in the last 4 years, you haven't done anything. And that's why, they need to do this. And I think, there's an article about the Housing Authority 2 years ago where they were asked about their role and the Housing Trust role. And Carolyn Ng, who's still on the Housing Authority, stated very specifically that the trust's job is to do the big picture stuff and to look at it in relation to other priorities for the town and to provide the direction and to actually make the project happen. And they said, and it makes sense, she said this, she said it makes sense for that to be the case because the selectmen are essentially the trust and they have that broader view than we have. And that's why they should do that. Our job is, this is the Housing Authority speaking, is once they have gotten the purchase of the property through town meeting, they give it to us and we do the RFP and we do this and that. And they're basically turning that on its head and saying they're the idea people, although they brag about the fact that they don't know anything about housing. So somehow, I believe, however you choose to, I don't think it's a matter of just taking a vote. I really think you need to make a strong statement at town meeting. And I don't think you can just say, it's not fair to say we don't care about affordable housing, because the argument they will have out there is that you haven't done anything. And we don't want at town meeting to get into this argument about the fact that you actually spent a year and a half of the last 4 years asking them when they were going to be done with this local employment study that they told you for a year and a half Elizabeth wasn't able to do a whole lot of other things that you were wondering why they weren't getting done, and it was because she was busy with this study. And there was a whole planning going on by them of the forum, and you said, well, if it's a forum about local employment and you're doing this study, shouldn't we wait till we get that data? And they were like, we don't want to do that. We're going to go ahead anyway. And you actually voted not to support the forum. They went ahead and did it anyway. Another 6 months to a year went by, at the end of which time you were finally told that the chair of the Housing Authority had told the housing coordinator not to do the study. But nobody ever said, well, wait a minute, she's supposedly spent a year and a half of time doing the study, and you never got anything of it. And I don't think the public knows this, and you can't have this discussion at town meeting, but it's absolutely outrageous that they are saying that you didn't do anything, because what you were trying to do for all that time was to engage them in a discussion. And for the last year and a half to 2 years, Nathan, you worked very hard as chair to try to get them to engage in a discussion about moving to a regional approach and to consider it. And Mark came to this board and said, I'm not going to provide you any information because I don't want to take part in a process that might end up us not having a housing coordinator. Mm-hmm. And that's what you were doing. You were beating your heads against the Housing Authority wall. And it's just top to bottom, it's one of these things that's so ridiculous that it's going to be very hard for the discussion at town meeting to not end up being sort of emotional and finger pointing and just people saying things that just aren't true, which they are doing quite a bit of. Anyway.
They may be, but I think it's, and I'm saying this very sincerely, it's really important for us not to get, it's going to be difficult probably, but it's really important for us not to get into the finger pointing and the untruth. We need to be as dispassionate as possible. We may or may not win on the floor of town meeting. I am sincerely hoping that town meeting will take our advice and the advice of the FinCom, and I think it'll be more likely that they take our advice if we can remain dispassionate than if we get down, to a different level. So,
no, I agree with you, but the last thing I would say is I think it's very important. I believe you're going to consider a letter to the editor And I think it's critically important that you get something in the paper, because they are sending out this letter and they've got a petition. I don't know why it's a petition, because you don't present a petition to town meeting, but, and Steve did a robocall that people around town have been getting this call urging people to come out, and if you believe in affordable housing, you need to do this. So I don't think at town meeting is the only time that you should do something, so I encourage you to put a letter in the paper.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, so I do want us to talk about a letter to the mosquito. I do want us to talk about what our response might be at town meeting. But what I'm gonna propose is that we go ahead and vote on the amendment and get through the rest of this, and then come back
Yeah.
around to that.
That's fine.
Good idea. So I move that the Board of Selectmen does not support the amendment to Article 11.
That's gonna be proposed by Housing
That's
Authority?
going to be proposed by the Housing Authority.
So should we vote to support the amendment or not?
Yeah, we're
Do-
gonna
do-
vote to not support it.
Yeah, but we put nots in motions?
Can vote to oppose it.
Yeah, or vote to oppose,
Oh.
yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, usually you vote to
Okay, so let's
support
vote
and then
to
you just,
support it and
nay.
then not.
And then,
and
right,
vote- Yeah, I'd rather do
Right.
that than vote to oppose, because
right.
I'm trying to keep
Yeah, no,
the
exactly. You
inflammation
keep-
at the
right.
lowest level as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the motion?
Motion is a vote to support the amendment proposed by the Housing Authority to Article 11.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
All right.
So what this means is that a yay vote means you support the amendment, and a nay vote means you do not support the amendment.
Correct.
Okay, I'm tired, I just wanted to repeat that.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's good.
That's good.
Yep.
All right,
Start off.
so a nay means you don't support
You
the
don't, we
amendment.
won't,
So
right.
Brown nay.
Yes,
Yes or nay?
read nay.
Oscar Lilo, nay?
Von Roskin, nay.
Okay, so we do not support the amendment.
Okay.
Okay. So, let's move on.
Capital
All right. Article 12, long-term caps are recommended program of projects. Either Josh Kablonsky or Jerry Lerman will be making a motion.
No, actually, I am.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, I'm the vice chair.
Okay. All right, very good, didn't know that.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Is there a motion to support Article 12?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded?
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Brown, aye.
Kissinger, aye.
Read aye.
Oscar Lilo, aye?
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, and Kate, you're gonna do that one?
Municipal facilities? Oh,
No.
No.
No,
Okay, yeah.
no, the long-term caps, yes, I'm doing that one.
Yeah. All right, Article 13, municipal facilities.
All right, well, that'll either be Josh or Jerry. Josh is back from
Right.
traveling.
Josh is not back from traveling.
No, not yet.
Yeah, so it'll be
It'll
Jerry.
be Jerry.
So-
Or unless somebody else from Muni.
Bill?
No. So it'll probably be Jerry.
Jerry said he would do it.
Yeah, all right.
So is there, are there any questions about this article?
The only,
Yeah.
yeah, the only thing I had was, you know, we had kind of gone back and forth as to whether or not these things had to be done specifically and exactly as they were written. Right, did that ever get resolved? I mean, because ultimately, you don't want to vote for $387,000 and then have none of this stuff get done. You know what I mean? I mean, I know there's gonna be some flexibility to move stuff around, but, you know, my initial, point was that, you know, you don't tell the town that we're gonna do all these things and then
Yeah.
only do half of them.
So I think this came up the last time we looked at this, and so,
Yep.
was that dealt with, Tim?
I know that Josh talked with council for quite a while, and the council felt that the motion could go forward. And it's a little squishy, you know, we're
Yeah.
gonna do projects like these. This list we have right here.
Yeah, in here all.
With-
yeah,
with-
but-
We'd be well advised
numbers
to
there.
stick to that list.
Yeah, with,
And-
right.
Yeah, but I think that the bigger concern, though, wasn't whether or not the facilities committee was gonna be doing these particular projects. It was if the exterior wall clapboard insulation costs 15,000,
Right.
but the heat cables cost, 14,000,
Yeah.
can we
Right.
move the
That-
money
that-
from one of those
that's-
buckets to the other?
That's permissible.
That's
Yeah.
permission,
That's
okay,
Right. If you save money on one project, it can be applied to another.
Yeah.
okay.
But the bottom line will be 387, 111.
Right. And if you had extra money, or if you decided not to repair the overhead door trim, but decided to do something else, you could add something, you could take this off and do a different project as well. For this, because it says here, shall not be limited
not be
to those
limited to-
shown in the following table.
Right.
Shall include, may include,
Well,
but
that,
shall
yeah,
not
see-
be limited.
Right, see, that was my
That's-
whole thing, is that you don't sell the town on $387,000 if this is what we're gonna do. So I think this is one of those things where, we're gonna have to oversee this,
Yeah.
fairly strongly, and just make sure, not that we distrust the facilities committee, but ultimately, when you make a commitment to the town that we're gonna get these things done, it's gonna cost us a lot of money. And ultimately, yeah, the prices will change, but, the thing is, I don't want to go back to town meeting next year in a couple of years and have 80% of these things on the list again.
Right. I think this is partly the FinCom's concern as
Yeah.
well, because they delayed taking a vote to,
In fact, they haven't taken a position.
on their position, because they're
They'd like-
concerned about
yeah.
controls.
Right.
They'd like to see this board finalize the charge
Do we need, yes.
before they'll take a position.
Yeah.
They're happy with the changes that were made last time.
I thought that we finalized that in the last Board
It
of
was like
Selectmen?
95%.
Yeah, they
Right.
did a couple of extra tweets.
Right.
Circulated it today, and actually Kerry found something in there that I think is an important point to discuss, where the language of the charge is that this covers all buildings and facilities owned by the town or constructed on land owned, leased, or controlled by the town. And Kerry said, does this imply we're responsible
Benfield.
to
Yeah,
maintain
Benfield.
Benfield or other? And I don't think that was the
Taylor.
intention. It was intended to be town-owned facilities on town lands,
Yeah.
this building, police, fire,
Yeah.
the list that we enumerate. So I think maybe that language needs to be cleaned up, because we don't
Yeah.
want to imply we're taking on maintenance
So we
responsibility.
can take a vote on that at 6:30 on Monday?
This,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the FinCom's meeting as well, but they want to know that, we're all on the same page, because they had similar concerns about controls.
Yeah.
And I think
So
we
can you
addressed those.
send out a version with Carrie's edits?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it will do.
All right, is there a motion on Article 13?
I didn't make any edits, I just raised the question, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can clean up the language, send it to the board.
Okay.
we do.
I think the other thing we wanted to do from what you read was, I think we wanted to explicitly pull the school out of there, right?
We did that, and we
Okay.
put staggered terms in for the members, I think Kate had suggested that.
Good
Really,
point.
to the contracting authority will be with the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
And the committee will be advisory, provide guidance to the facilities manager, but the contracting piece will.
Basically, they'll
Consistent with how we
do
things.
what they did here, is they'll give us the list of the prior, a little bit like long-term caps.
Right, exactly.
Right,
uh,
a priority list.
a priority list, but they're not gonna do the work.
No.
Right.
All right. Motion
So
on
wait,
Article
we need a
13?
motion. I move that the Board of Selectmen support Article 13.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Okay, Brown, aye.
Gary, you still there? No, he's,
Yeah. I love how the light's behind him, he's just like in the
yeah,
shadows.
Reed, aye.
Oscar Lilo,
He
aye?
left us?
He did. Either that or he fell out of his
Yeah.
chair.
That-
No,
He's back.
there you go.
Carrie, do you support Article 13?
kissing your eye.
Okay.
I already voted, so.
Okay, Von Roskin.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Article 14 is the animal control bylaw. This one, Rick, or-
Yeah, so I think, ultimately, Suki and Stacy. I'll move it, yeah, but Suki and Stacy will present, and I can chime in if needed. But I think this is gonna be kind of a multi-person thing. Different folks on it. I hope not. I've talked with a few different people. The big question typically comes around the dog walkers, the commercial dog walkers, because people are concerned that they're not gonna be able to use their dog walker. I've emphasized to those people, so the reason that the licensing is in place, or the permitting is in place, is really, so the town has an idea of what's going on, how many dog walkers we have, that sort of thing. So the way it's written now is, a company is allowed up to 3 licenses to be used simultaneously in town. Odds are, it's not gonna necessarily be like a paper thing that somebody has to carry with them. It's gonna be, if there's an offense, a police officer will show up and say, who are you? They'll get the ID and everything, and they'll have to say, oh, well, I work for ABC Dog Walking Company, and then they'll be able to go back and say, okay, they're licensed in the town, and yeah, they are permitted or they're not. And like I've been telling different individuals is, if every company's given 3 permits, right? Ultimately, if you have 5 people in town, right, even though you only have 3 permits, unless there's issues with all 5 or greater than 3, it's never gonna be, it's never gonna get recognized as, oh, this company had 4 dog walkers in town without permits. It's really, it's a way to, it's a way to really determine how many commercial dog walkers are in town, and ultimately, if you do have somebody who's kind of a continuous offender, you yank their permits. But,
So, but let's say there's a dog walking company, like WAG or whatever, and they've got 17 clients in town, they can't, so what is the permit covering exactly?
so the permit allows, basically an individual, right, to walk dogs in that town. So there is a company in Concord that actually has a fairly large clientele in this town. And that owner's concern is that, she may have an individual in Concord who then goes to Billerica. Are they going to have to try and pass the permit off? That sort of thing. She has individuals who are just part-time employees for her. Some are senior citizens that will walk dogs in town. Does she have to leave a permit with that individual? And that's not really what this is meant to be. It's not kind of a, it's not meant to be a restriction. It's more so meant to be, one, so we can monitor, basically, the number of dog walkers in town. Also, too, it's so we can see, are they coming in just from Concord and Billerica, or are they coming from Fitchburg, or are they coming from...
Well, I guess where I'm confused is, why would a company need more than 1 permit? Is it, unless you're restricting it to 3 dog walkers from that company, so that's what I'm trying to understand. What is the purpose of the permit?
Yeah, so the permit goes with the walker, right? So basically it would limit them to have 3 walkers in town at any given time. The idea is really so, a company can't come and, send 15 dog walkers to Carlisle. I mean, and odds are it's, again, if they are sending 15 and there aren't any issues, it's never nobody's ever gonna know if they've got 3 permits or 15 or none. Okay. It's really, the way that this is designed to be is really, if there's ever an offense, that's when the flags go up. And that's when, right, that's when this thing actually has, no pun intended, a little bit of teeth. We can find somebody, or we can pull their permit, or,
we could find them $300 for the 3rd offense anyway.
We can find people for a 3rd offense. Yeah, I mean, so it's really.
So it says here that the permit shall state the number of dogs. So it's tied to a person.
Yeah, it's tied to the person, right?
It's tied to a person. So if you're a dog company, you can only have 3 employees who work in Carlisle. And that one person can only, it said cannot exceed 5 dogs. Does that mean that one person can only have 5 dog clients?
No, 5 dogs at one given time.
5 dogs at one time.
At one point in time. Yeah.
Well, not at one point in time. 5 dogs on one walk at the same time.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's part of it too. Is kind of as.
Well, I was struggling with it.
Yeah,
I think we have to go ahead, and it might have to be tweaked.
Yeah, so, right, so that's another thing. I mean, part of this, right, part of this whole thing is, we tried to put something together that made sense, that worked from the feedback that we got from members of the community. I mean, we had 2 public sessions. that we had probably a grand total of 60 or 70 people at, the two of them, total. And then we did on occasion have people come to our meetings. So the turnout was pretty good. And, the idea is though that this is gonna be kind of, to use Tim's term, squishy over the next year. And we're gonna need to see what things work, what things don't.
How are dog walking companies even supposed to know that they need to get a license?
Well, yeah, see, and that's all part of it too, is, it's,
But
right.
This is mostly, from what I'm understanding, this is mostly targeted at dog walkers coming from another town with the other town's dogs.
Yeah,
in
it's really
fact,
more
to-
so that, exactly.
To walk them on our property,
Right.
rather than somebody coming to my house and taking my dog out for a walk.
Correct.
Or puppy breaks or whatever, okay.
Correct.
So it's really the commercial dog companies that are importing the dogs.
Right.
Rather than somebody who's helping our residents out walking our dogs.
Exactly, right, because the mindset behind it is that, the offenders, right, the people who, have really been kind of the onus behind this whole bylaw are probably not Carlilians. They're probably from other towns, they just don't care, or it's, it could be that it's a dog walker with somebody from Carlisle's dog that just doesn't care. But, the idea and just some of the feedback that we've gotten is really that, when people do have issues, it's not with Carlisle residents or, Carlisle affiliated. It's more the outside stuff. So, there are also things in there like licensing. As you well know, licensing is a big issue. Larry Sorley said, so he's one of the animal control officers. He said about 60% of the dogs in town are not actually licensed. And that's another thing. How do you actually enforce that? It's difficult to do. But it's one of those things that it'll put it on people's radar. Some people, their dogs have the chips, and the chips have never actually even been activated. So it's just, there's a number of things that we're going to learn over the next year. That we'll have to tweak this. And I think, honestly, it's going to be an ongoing tweak for a few years until we figure it out and get it right. But, we need to start somewhere. And I think as long as folks are accepting of it, at least initially, there's nothing really strong in there that at least from the feedback we've gotten, has really turned people off. I spoke with Brian Cruz the other day. We had a very good conversation. So I think everybody knows Brian. He usually stands up at town meeting and has some comments on, particularly the bylaws. He made some very good points. We were able to talk through some of the things, and he was supportive of it as it's written. But again, with the idea that this will be tweaked kind of moving forward. And but yeah, you really just got to start somewhere. So.
You want a motion?
Okay, yeah.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support Article 14.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, Brown eye.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Von Roskin, aye.
Sorry, and just one more quick thing with this too is that it's also, it's also bringing it in line with state statutes now, with certain
There's
things.
dog walking, there's dog walking companies in the state statute?
No, but there's nuisance dogs and
Dangerous
dogs, yeah, which we didn't have any language for, so.
Okay. Okay, Article 15, special appropriations. I'm sorry, Tim, I keep.
No, that's quite all right. These
Just trying to-
Controlling.
Just
these are special appropriations. We've been on the list for a number of years. They're made so that they're continuing appropriations. That's why they're not in the operating budget, so that they can carry over from year to year if they're not used in any one fiscal year. Anybody want
Okay.
to?
Yeah, anybody want that one? I'll take it if anybody wants one, so.
We can't let Claude get off scot-free, yeah.
I'll do 16.
Oh, yeah, that's
Okay, thank you.
right up. All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support Article 15.
Is there a
Second.
second? Claude, second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Brown eye.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowai?
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay. PEG programming is Claude.
We don't need any discussion about this, all right?
Is there a motion?
I move that we support Article 16, PEG educational, public education government, local access.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Brown eye.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowai?
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, Article 17.
No motion will be presented, it says,
Does it say that?
in the motion book.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm sorry, Kim.
It's okay, nothing had, you're just telling them what you need them to discuss next.
No position there. Article 18, this is to accept the portion of general laws that allows the board to establish speed limits and that designate safety zones with speed limits.
So I had a quick question about that, because we voted last fall, or this past winter, to change the speed limits to 25, but that
Contingent.
was
on-
contingent upon it not being, needing this, right?
Right.
So that, I
Right.
just want to be clear, I just want to make sure that that vote does not take effect because of this. We have to re-vote that.
Right, right.
Yeah,
The meeting has to accept this, and then
Right.
you would have the authority, and I presume you have a public.
To
process take
re-vote
input
the
in.
speed limit signs.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I was just gonna propose that we rescind that vote if it was still out there.
Well, I will do it provisionally, so I move we rescind the vote that we took. What? you
Yeah,
wanted
might
to
as
say
well.
something?
Don't know,
Oh.
I don't recall the date we got.
Whenever it was that we took it.
Any prior?
Any prior votes in regard to changing speed limits in town?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowai?
Von Roskin, aye.
That way, it's just very
Yeah.
clear at town
It's
meeting
cleaner.
that
It's much
nobody can
cleaner.
say, well, you could just do it.
Who wants to handle that one?
Well, we haven't voted the acceptance of the,
Okay, I move that we support Article 18, the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
any further discussion? Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowai?
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, yeah, now,
Who did well,
who wants it? Who wants the hot potato?
That's gonna be the opportunity? I'll take it if nobody else wants it. I have enough mud slinged at me. I don't care, I'll do it. Keep me awake anyway.
all you're gonna do is read the motion, right? I mean, you're not gonna just explain it. If anybody explains anything.
Chief Fisher will be there.
It'll be
Yeah.
Chief Fisher,
Yeah,
so.
Okay, Article 19, I'll take that.
okay.
I move that we support Article 19.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowai?
Von Roskin, aye.
Luke should
Okay.
take 20, because he's
Yeah, I'll
the
do 20.
representative of CPA.
Yep. Yeah, I'll do 20.
So I
The whole
move
time meeting.
that the selectmen vote to support Article 20 for CPA annual
Do we have to do that by motion?
Motion.
Or do we have to do it by,
Motion 1, 2, 3, 4. I move that we
Support
support
all the
motions
motions?
1 through 4 in Article 20 CPA recommendations.
okay, is there a second? Okay, does anybody have any questions about any of these motions that Luke can answer?
It's a doubly loaded question.
Exactly, I was just thinking about how to get myself out of that, then I thought, nah.
Yeah. So one thing that did come up is that we base this on an 18% state match, and the state match recently came in at 11%. So the state's kicking back and forth as to whether or not they're gonna throw more money at it. But I haven't talked with Priscilla, over the past couple of days. If we wanted to change that, the overall number,
The numbers in the motion book are different than lower, correct? So they've already been.
oh, they already changed it on me.
Priscilla, yeah, she adjusted
Oh.
the
Oh,
numbers
good.
downward.
Oh, perfect.
Reflect the-
Just so far behind.
Yeah.
Nice of her to tell me.
And if they change them again, maybe before Monday night.
Oh, it's 52, okay.
free to-
All right, no, perfect, good, good. Nope, that's perfect, good, all right. Yeah, I mean, because it's possible, but, you know, so what they do is every few years, they look to see to make sure that you're actually, you know, hitting that 10% or thereabouts. Yeah, and if you don't, they are not overly pleased. But, yeah, we typically go in with like 18%, it floats between, you know, 18 and like 20, so we've been pretty good. But yeah, 11% just through everybody, so,
Well, it might bounce up and it's still
yeah.
better than a poke in the nose.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yep.
Okay, Article 21.
Let me see,
We never
we
voted
didn't
on,
vote on.
Oh, that's right.
designate-
Brown eye.
I got talking.
Kissinger?
Kissinger, aye.
Kissinger. Reed, aye.
Oscar Lilloye.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, so now we're to Article 21. That's a planning board article, so they present that?
Yep.
So I move, however, that this Board of Selectmen vote to support Article 21, temporary moratorium on marijuana establishments.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I did get an email from Pete Gambino today, just wanted to make sure we were on the same page with this. Do we want to present anything on this, or do we want them to?
Not I.
I mean, I think it should be
Said the
pretty
little red
straightforward.
hand.
Yeah.
You just said that a few minutes ago.
No, I understand that, but do we want to present anything as well? I know it will be the planning board, but do we want to make a statement or anything?
We have not had any discussions or study
No,
or
right,
anything else
yeah.
about this, so I don't see the point.
No, okay. But we
Unless
are.
somebody
yeah.
had some, objection to this whole
Right.
thing.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Not enough review, I don't think.
Yeah. No, okay. No, I just want to make
I
sure
think
that.
this is us, we did it at their request where.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a motion to support, however.
Yeah.
Somebody second.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? We already had this first and second. Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oscar Lilloye?
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, Finance Committee. Are we doing this one, or is, I guess we have to do
We
it
have to,
because
that's
it's their
our
committee.
bylaw.
Okay.
Maybe I'll take this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll
I
let
might
you
as
do
well
it.
take it.
Yeah,
I
it's
was a
yours.
troublemaker
Yeah.
that got us started to begin with. And I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support Article 22.
Second.
Any further discussion? Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oscar Lilloye?
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay. Personnel bylaw.
I move that the Board of Selectmen support Article 23 personnel bylaw.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oscar Lilloye?
Von Roskin, aye.
That's 23.
I can take this one because it was my proposal. Okay,
I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 24 land transfer. Parcels 423A1, 423A3 to Conservation Commission.
Second.
any further discussion? Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oscar Lilloye?
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, I can take that
I was
one.
gonna say,
I'll take that
yeah.
one.
That's
That's
life is a
that's
trouble.
the end of the
Article
the road
25,
there.
that's not gonna be,
That's gonna be
moved?
presented, no,
Yeah.
was withdrawn.
Good.
So there's no vote.
Okay, and then, so are we done, or is there,
That's all the articles. but
that's all the
we
articles?
Still have to talk about that letter, I think.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to that, but is that everything about,
That's everything.
Town meeting?
Yep.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Now the letter.
Yes.
So Kate, you had drafted a new version of the letter?
Yes, which got sent to you earlier, and then I made like two or
You made even
three-
more changes?
I'm sorry, yes.
Well, I haven't, don't worry, I didn't have a chance to read the first
Oh,
one.
good, so then don't read the first one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, if you're not gonna go back to the discussion of the amendment, there is one thing I wanted to let you know. So, when this is a little bit of an unusual thing, I can't recall, certainly there has not been a proposed amendment to the budget since I've been moderator, so, and I can only recall one once.
Wayne, can you speak a little louder, please?
Sorry. I'm saying I just wanted to go over procedures a little bit since budget amendments are relatively rare in Carlisle. So when this comes up, I'll do the usual thing of asking for any boards or committees that took a vote. I don't know if anyone else will take a vote besides you and the Housing Authority, but then you'll just report your vote at that time. And then I will recognize whoever you decide. You get 3 minutes to give, in essence, the Board of Selectmen's view, one of you speaking on behalf of the board, your view on the matter. And then after that, as debate opens up, for the rest of the debate, you are just like anyone else in town. You're just another citizen. There's no special, you don't get any special rights as selectmen. And I don't say that because I'm making any presumptions about that you would accord that to yourselves. Well, okay.
Quite,
Present
in fact,
company
quite the
accepted.
opposite.
But also, I mean, I guess the unfortunate reality is that this issue may well be presented as an us against them housing authority versus selectmen. And whether that's accurate or not is a political matter. It's up for the, up to the people to judge. But at least as far as the meeting goes, it's just, there's, not unlike Kate said, okay, there's an issue up, Board of Selectmen made their determination, boom, it is what it is. And after that, the debate just proceeds as normal. Okay, so I just want to be clear on that. And so if if each one of you wants to speak, you're able to do that, but I'm not going to go bing, bing, bing down the line. You're only going to get, mixed in as I call on other people around the room.
Mhm.
All right?
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Have fun with it. I certainly will.
All right, so,
I do have a question. So what if somebody in the audience asks a question? Because typically if somebody has a question on a motion or an article, there's one specific group that's gonna respond, right? Like if somebody has a question on CPA, right? Whoever's presented responds. So what if somebody has a question just in general, that's not directed, you know what I mean? Like this can be, should the selectman or the trust answer because we have one view, or should the housing authority answer because they have one view?
we should both answer.
Or should
because
both answer?
The views are
Right.
different.
Yeah. Right, well, that's, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, right now I'm speaking to presumably as selectmen. If you have a different view as the trust, then you take a vote in a trust meeting.
Then we'd have to hear from them so many more times.
Exactly. No, I have no real trust.
Questions are always, people can always ask the questions. Whether I have someone answer, that's at my discretion. And so basically, if I feel like it's a pertinent question, then I would turn to the pertinent board and say, could you please respond to that?
Might there be
so-
questions, though, that you would decide to ask both boards to answer? The single question?
Potentially, I mean, it just, I'm always guided by, is it something that actually is going to be good information that will advance the the knowledge of the voters, you know, and I try to be generous, you know, I don't want to cut people off, but at the same time, there has to be some efficiency and relevancy to it. So, you know, obviously, just as a, for example, if someone says, okay, well, you know, what were the budget requests that were proposed but denied, then probably I'd say, you know, could someone from FinCom please address that? If someone said specifically, well, you know, the Board of Selectmen, tell us more about what your thought was around this mediation process, this and that, and so forth. You know, if you've made an argument about we ought to go through that process, then that's kind of relevant to what's going on. So then I would say, okay, someone from the board, please address that. So, you know, again, I just have to play it by ear.
Yeah, I guess that's
and
really.
I you know, don't see that, you know, I hope I wouldn't be playing it any different than I would if it was something on solar or a school building project or whatever. Same thought process.
Okay.
Okay,
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
see you Monday.
So this is,
Is it this Monday? No.
Oh,
I'm joking, I'm
so if you want
joking.
to get something into the mosquito, you better hurry.
Yeah.
yeah.
When do we need to get presentations to you?
Last week.
Tomorrow night.
Plenty of time. Yeah.
You can have till Thursday.
Oh, thanks.
Special treatment.
Yeah,
Okay.
see?
So,
Surprised you didn't say I gotta get
okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
So what was just handed out is, this is the first Kate version?
What was just handed out is the last Kate version.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have this?
There are two versions of Kate.
Second and last.
Yes.
It only got-
No, you
Well,
got,
I'm sorry. There was a whole bunch more.
yeah. The one that was in your, yeah, okay. I brought plenty of copies. Well, don't print that one yet.
Yeah, Betsy's waiting on
Don't print that.
this letter.
Tick, 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 tick.
Okay.
Hey, would you mind if I ask you to read it?
Well, it's up to the,
I may fall asleep, but
Yeah, please go ahead
Okay.
and read it, and also maybe point out where this differs.
yeah, where the edits are.
Where this differs from the one.
oh, well, the edits from.
that I had
from
sent out before.
Nathan's are kind of extensive. I think I kept all of Nathan's paragraphs and points. I rearranged a bunch of them, and I changed.
I emailed your first letter out to everybody today, so Terry probably has your first draft.
So if you have my
Not this
first
one.
draft, and then the second draft of my thing only has a couple of little changes, and I can tell you where I put them. But where I changed Nathan's is a little more difficult. And I don't have a copy of Nathan's old, original, so I can't, so.
My original's not in the packet.
It is in the packet. I believe.
It is?
I was gonna hand them out, but
Oh.
I decided not to because there was other
Would-
versions.
Oh,
Yeah, would you
okay.
I didn't want to confuse anyone.
Because I sent out one as
So you guys
proposed,
could,
and then this
you
is
guys
Kate's
could be
edit.
reading Nathan's version as I'm reading mine out loud, if you wanted to do it that way, I don't know.
Well, I guess before jumping into that, did anybody else have any edits to it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
No, I thought I got the points across, and I thought it was,
So nobody else has
Interesting.
one they want to put on the table for us to consider?
I don't have anything.
So,
All right.
I tried to keep all of your points, Nathan, I just maybe rearranged some of them. So how do you want to handle this then? Am I gonna read it or not?
Well, I think you're going to need to read it for Carrie.
Okay. The Selectmen voted not to support the Housing Authority's proposed budget amendment to fund the housing coordinator position for several reasons. The Selectmen requested a working group to study the town's staffing needs for housing. This group has reported that current needs can be covered with maximum cost effectiveness by existing administrative and council on aging staff, and that any legal issues can be handled under the retainer by town council. The Selectmen have accepted their recommendation. I know there's a lot of the selectmen in here, but the selectmen do not currently support funding research or other housing studies before differences between the Housing Trust and Housing Authority regarding goals and strategy have been addressed. The housing coordinator's retirement creates an opportunity to develop a coordinated approach to affordable housing before the town reevaluates the role. In addition, the planning board's initiative to begin a master planning process is expected to include extensive public outreach towards the establishment of priorities for the investment of financial and human resources related to town needs, including housing. This planning is critical to ensure that our funds are well spent. In the meantime, the selectmen have included funding in the budget for technical expertise from a regional housing consortium. Finally, such an amendment is at odds with a long-standing understanding of the months-long budget process during which the Finance Committee, in collaboration with the selectmen, reviews budget requests and evaluates them in relation to competing needs, expected receipts, and long-term debt and other financial obligations of the town. During this process and over many meetings, requests from town entities are sometimes reduced or denied. The proposed amendment sets a bad precedent. We agree that we need affordable housing, but that doesn't mean that spending money without a collaboratively developed strategic approach will move the town forward toward a solution. We recommend a no vote on the budget amendment.
So one of the things that, one of the ideas that I had in there in the first paragraph was, the timing of it. Having in there that, it's really a good opportunity because there's nobody in the role.
Yeah, they're still in there, but I've moved it down because
I didn't.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
housing coordinator's retirement creates an opportunity to develop coordinated approach.
Okay.
I've got one comment, and that is that no one reading the Mosquito is going to know what their proposed amendment is, because it's not in the warrant, unless the Housing Authority in fact have letters or something going into the next issue of Mosquito.
Well, they've been sending out mailings and calling people,
Yeah, but that still doesn't say what they've.
Yeah, the problem is we're limited to 350 words.
Well, it does say what it is. It says their amendment is to fund the housing coordinator position. That's essentially what it is.
But that's a good point.
It is,
If
yeah.
people don't really understand what we're arguing against, we're not making a very effective argument.
Well, this was predicated on thinking that people would know
Yes.
what the amendment was.
Right. Thinking that they actually spend all their time watching us here.
Maybe this is better statement read at the
Well, there's going to be
town
one of
meeting.
those too, but it's not, it's a little different.
You have 3 peak concurrent viewers on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good point.
So from a technical standpoint, if I may, you can't say that the selectmen requested a working group, because the only way this works is that you ask Tim for advice, and on his own initiative, he sets up
That's
a
what I was
working
trying to, yeah, okay, that was what I was trying to,
Yeah, that's what I had in mind.
If you request a working group, then it has to go through all open meeting law. But if you just say, Tim, give us advice, and he decides to set up a working group, he's doing that as a town employee.
Which is what happened.
And right.
yeah, I wanted to be more clear that it wasn't us that did the study, that it was a working group that made a recommendation to us.
But
So
you also
maybe
don't,
we
you
have
also
to-
didn't accept the recommendation of the working group, you accepted Tim's recommendation.
You're right.
Yeah, so it would be the,
Okay,
I think what
so
Nathan had
requested,
said that correctly.
no, it says that after months of careful study, we concluded that current, and frankly, I didn't study it for a minute, so I can't sign on to that. The working group that Tim,
Well, I presented a recommendation to the board.
Yes.
Along with that matrix that
So then we requested a recommendation from the,
Well, we could just say that instead of the selectmen requested, the town administrator established a working group
okay, yes,
to study the town staffing needs for housing.
that's exactly.
Right, and then the selectmen have accepted, should it be Tim's recommendation or the town administrator's recommendation?
The selectmen
No.
do not support funding research or other housing studies before goals and strategy have been established.
Now,
In
this-
addition,
I'm sorry, I'm
the
gonna,
planning board, I want to get through it. In addition, the planning board's initiative to begin a master planning process is expected to include extensive public outreach towards the establishment of priorities for the investment of financial and human resources related to town needs, including housing. This planning is critical to ensure that taxpayer funds are well spent. In the meantime, the selectmen have included funding in the budget for technical expertise from the regional consortium. Finally, such an amendment is at odds with a longstanding understanding of the months-long budget process during which the Finance Committee, in collaboration with the selectmen, reviews budget requests and evaluates them in relation to competing needs, expected receipts, and long-term debt, and other financial obligations to the town. During this process and over many meetings, requests from town entities are sometimes reduced or denied. This proposed amendment sets a bad precedent. We agree that building affordable housing takes time, but that doesn't mean that spending taxpayer money without a collaboratively developed strategic approach will move the town forward towards a solution.
actually,
Sorry,
my
I cut
late.
you off, so yeah.
Sorry, well, there's two things. In my last version of this, instead of agreeing that building affordable takes time, I changed it to, we agree that we need affordable housing. I don't know what taking time had anything to do with.
Well, it's because that's the argument they've been making consistently, that that's why they're
gonna
saying we
lose a
have to
whole
do this
year,
now, we're gonna
they say.
lose this time. I
Okay.
think it's really important.
All right, so we'll leave that, that's fine. But Claude was making the point that we don't think that a housing coordinator is the best vehicle for delivering studies. And so that may be, that in your one sentence,
Well, we
one
go,
sentence paragraph, we could have said, the selectmen do not support funding research or other funding studies before we've done this. And as well, we don't consider that the housing administrator is the best person to do the job. That's
Right.
better, some,
Right, the housing coordinator, the housing coordinator position is not, spending money on a housing coordinator position is not the best way to,
no, it's actually it's that a housing coordinator is not the right person to do this.
he says,
Okay.
the housing coordinator is not the right
So,
person.
and so you would say it right after,
I'm adding it to the end of that first sentence. So it'd say the selectmen do not support funding research for other housing studies,
Or other housing.
research or other housing studies before goals and strategy have been established. And we do not feel that a housing coordinator is the right resource for that task.
Right, perfect. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a break, I'll be back.
well, you haven't said what the task is yet.
Researching and housing
researching
studies.
and-
It's in that sentence.
Yeah, that's by implication.
No, it's perfect.
but, and then you could add one more sentence maybe to the effect that, we feel that, consultants paid out of, the housing trust budget is the best way to accomplish this, or something like that. In other words, we have a concrete,
I mean, yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
it's just a suggestion.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think that's stuff that we could address at
Well,
town
but you
meeting.
could say, you could do semicolon, focused spending on consultants. You maybe don't need to do that.
With
Just be done.
expertise,
I was just gonna say,
It's good.
this doesn't need to be in the minutes.
I think you guys just lost me in that very
When
last
we talk
amendment.
about the regional approach,
You talk about it later, yeah, which is fine.
I think we should say if it is needed, because they're basically saying we're trading off dollars.
I
We
have,
don't know that we need to spend those dollars.
right,
So
I had that in my version. Is that not in this version?
It's not, so it's at the end of the paragraph
That I was just editing?
for regional, no, it's the following one.
Right. Okay. This planning is critical to ensure taxpayers' benefit. In the meantime, the selectmen have included funding in the budget for technical expertise from a regional housing consortium.
If such,
we could even say, yeah,
If such is needed.
If it is needed.
if such is needed.
That's
I would
good.
say if it is needed. It's technical expertise. Or on an as-needed basis. No, it's not. It's if it is needed, because you buy in.
Okay. The selectmen do not support funding, research, or other housing studies before goals and strategy have been established, and we don't feel that a housing coordinator is a resource for the task. In addition, the planning board's initiative to begin a master planning process is expected to include extensive public outreach towards the establishment of priorities for the investment of financial and human resources related to town needs, including housing. This planning is critical to ensure that taxpayer funds are well spent. In the meantime, the selectmen have included funding in the budget for technical expertise from a regional housing consortium if it is needed.
So if you want to, that's where you'd say the Housing Trust also has available funds for specific consultants.
Hope this doesn't turn out to look like a camel, but I think it's getting
I think
the
it's-
points.
I think this is the last thing you need. He's just trying to make Claude's point.
No, it's absolutely true.
Existing CPA funding.
So, the average number of views of our meetings on YouTube are 60.
Wow.
With one, our oldest meeting is 80 views.
Wow.
Okay, so
That's because I keep on watching it over and over again.
Me too. It's us.
I just love to see myself.
this planning is critical to ensure that taxpayer funds are well spent. In the meantime, the selectmen have included funding in the budget for technical expertise from a regional housing consortium if it is needed. The Housing Trust also has funds available for consulting,
Consulting
for
services.
needs that may arise.
For consulting services.
For consulting services,
Period. I
in
don't-
the event the need arises.
No, I
You
don't
already
think
just
we
said
don't
if
need that.
such is needed. I
Okay.
think you want to make the point that it's,
If desired.
well, no, it's for it's for, it's the specificity, it's.
For affordable housing expertise.
Well, you've already said that, though.
For,
I wouldn't put that sentence in at all, because it just says, you mean you have duplicate sources of funds here?
Well,
No,
yes, we
no,
do, and
what it
that's why we
says
wanna
is
cut it.
that you haven't eliminated all funding for housing is their argument. You're saying we actually have funding that we don't even need a budget thing for, because you've already given us $40-some thousand, and it's still there, and because we haven't wasted it on their stupid studies, it's available. That's the point.
Yeah, we're actually voting.
Because the
later.
argument they're making to the public is that you've made it impossible for the town to move forward on housing. And so this is really important to make it clear that eliminating this position does not eliminate your ability to respond to housing needs.
How about if I just say the Housing Trust also has funds available for expert consulting services,
Period.
if required.
Again, I wouldn't put the if required. I mean,
Because
you know.
that's how you ended the previous sentence.
Yeah.
Right. That sound okay?
Mhm.
This plan is critical to ensure that taxpayer funds are well spent. In the meantime, the selectmen have included funding in the budget for technical expertise from a regional housing consortium if it is needed. The Housing Trust also has funds available for expert consulting services. You're just saying uh-huh to everything.
I just, yes.
Uh-huh.
I have to be on a plane.
This is how you torture people.
Yeah.
Sleep deprivation,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
You on a water board?
Yeah, please. Might keep me awake.
Yeah, I'm on California time, so it's only 8 o'clock for me.
Yeah, right, yeah. Keep in mind, my
All right,
meetings
so
tomorrow. This
is that done?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Why don't we
So-
put new chairs in the back?
I'm gonna read through this one more time. There may be a couple of words changed if I find that there are typos and everything. But I'm gonna send it to Betsy either tonight or first thing tomorrow morning.
Just send it tonight, because
So do we vote to,
Yes, do we
Yes.
vote to support this,
Submit
as
this letter.
amended with potential minor changes?
So move.
second?
When I can look at it.
So
with-
move, no.
Nice.
Oh,
I
okay.
moved, you second.
Yeah, I
Good,
seconded,
good.
yeah.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Brown eye.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oscar Lilo, aye.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, so I guess I should specify that this that I'm talking about is the letter to the mosquito.
That's what we understood, but
Yeah.
it's good that you
That was my
specified.
understanding.
In case we were wrong.
One, instead of expert consulting services, focused consulting services.
Okay.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's the point,
I
is
like
that
that
you
word,
can-
focus consulting service, yes.
That has to do with efficiency, was your point, basically, right, Clive?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Yeah, that's the only reason he's here.
so what else do we have to do?
Well, we have to talk about, I mean, I'm happy to be the person that stands up and responds.
3 minutes.
For 3 minutes. It means that I'm writing something between now and next Monday morning. And it also means that we can't do what we just did. Right? Because we're only gonna have half an hour, we can't collaboratively edit it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the points should be similar to that.
Yeah, it would be based upon this,
Based on this.
but not exactly the same thing,
Right.
because we're making these arguments here, we can make a few more arguments in 3 minutes.
Or just expand upon them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
I'm-
and
I'm happy if you need any help, be
May-
happy to, you know,
you may want them to be sort of a first, second, third, fourth, so you, as if you
I
had a
was almost
PowerPoint.
thinking about numbering these paragraphs as it was,
Good
but
thing
then
you
I.
didn't, because,
Yeah, no, yes, but
yeah.
that's the way I usually think
Right,
is. and-
but I think at town meeting, that may be useful.
Yeah.
Because then you can come back, you can come back to them. You can say, that was my first point, and that was my second point.
May I have a peppermint? Just one.
These are the cinnamon ones.
Thank you.
Oh, these are cinnamon,
Thank you.
so be careful.
Just to get them home.
So is, next on the
Well, okay.
agenda?
Okay.
We
I
have
can
to,
tell you what, can I do this without breaking open meeting law? Can I send out a draft to everybody? But if people have, because up to 2 people can have comments, right?
Right.
So if you don't have any comments,
can't.
just send me an email saying you don't have any comments,
Or don't send that email.
or no, send me
Yeah,
an
just
email.
don't send the
Yeah.
email.
What do you do if
well, but that technically
We
is,
can
that is
also-
Then I can-
affirming,
then I
it's sort
can
of
get-
affirming, I would argue, that would be participating.
But we'll have
Yeah.
time before town meeting.
30 minutes, and we just took
No, I
almost
think-
2 hours.
No, what you
Well,
do
but it's
is,
gonna be-
a little different.
I think what you do is you do the draft, you send it to people, and they come to the meeting with very focused comments,
Right.
with the understanding that you can't do this there,
Right.
and it's just gonna, and
Well,
you've got a half hour, and you
I
just.
think if you have really big, heavy comments, you have to send them to Nathan before the meeting so that he can consider them and decide whether to incorporate them and then send out another draft.
But that's open meeting law violation.
But I mean,
That I don't think,
but you've got the,
Yeah, the meat of
Structure.
it's here.
you got the structure.
I mean, I just think it's more important to not push those bounds. I mean, I'm sort of wondering about the housing authority sending out a letter on their auspices from a private address.
No, I didn't get one, but I have a copy of somebody,
Anyway, I don't
but
know.
I don't know who
Another can of
signed it,
worms,
so I don't know if it was really from the,
No, it's-
I
The
don't think-
return address is the housing authority,
oh, it was,
whatchamacallit, Wolf Rock Road, Carlisle, Mass.
oh, really?
It's Mark's address.
It's not Bill's.
Not Bill's address.
I don't know whether they even, posted a meeting and
Yeah,
approved
okay.
all that and all that.
I'm sure they didn't.
Well, all right.
Anyway,
Right.
I'll work on this, and
Yeah.
I'll talk to Tim about how we address getting people able to collaborate a little bit. But if it does get down to the end, if you have comments, as David was saying, come with them, and come with them in red line so we can see
Yeah.
them.
I think Nathan's job is just to, not do anything that's gonna make you think, wait a minute,
Yeah, right.
how did we end up here?
Right.
Yeah,
That
right.
shouldn't happen, because you've had this
I
discussion.
know the
Yeah.
tone.
Yeah,
right? I know the tone from
Have I
here.
beaten you up with that?
No, I don't think our tones were too different, actually.
Those are actually easy things to fix,
Yeah,
too,
well-
that if Kate comes in and says, instead of saying the word at
Unless and
odds,
until.
say the word
Yeah, but
breach, you know,
the
that's
problem is
easy.
then I can't print it, and
Yeah.
so,
You'll be much better rested at that point.
yes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Well, thank you for letting me take part. Appreciate it.
Appointments and resignations. There's a resignation from Sally Zelinski, and there's an appointment for Madeline Blake.
So I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to accept with gratitude the letter of resignation from Sally Zelinski, Ph.D., from the Board of Registrars effective June 30th, 2018.
Should we do this?
Yeah, well, I'm really sad, I have to say, I'm really sad to see her go, because we need those registrars, and she has
Okay.
not been replaced yet.
Do you want a second, Hip Hop? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowite.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay,
And I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Madeline Blake, 127 Carlton Road, to serve as the Planning Board's representative on the LIP Regulations Committee for a one-year term that will expire on June 30th, 2019. And by golly, I hope it doesn't last that long.
Second.
okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowite.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, those are done. I forgot we had executive session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot too.
All right, I'm gonna propose
didn't.
if there aren't any minutes, huh?
Oh.
Good.
Good.
Yes.
Nobody has any reports, right?
Small mercies,
Okay,
right?
can somebody please read
I
the
move
motion
that
for
the board
executive
enter
session?
into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Paragraphs 2 and 3, to discuss strategy with respect to bargaining with non-union personnel and litigation as an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the town's bargaining and litigating positions, and that afterwards the board will return to open session only for the purpose of adjournment.
Is there a second?
Are we, so we're skipping minutes?
We don't have
We
any.
don't have any to skip.
Okay.
And we would be anyway.
Second.
Yes.
I already seconded, Carrie.
Okay, so Brown eye?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Oskalilowite.
Von Roskin, aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.
Okay, wait.